spot, bringing stats like a kingpin. MMA knowledge needs his nephews all lean in. Breaking down fights, codes that daddy supreme on. Just a tip show, he's cooking up a dream. Uncle Weezy, he the man. Dropping fight facts, got it all on hand. He the stat attack grand. MMA guru, more than just a fan. Wanna know the numbers? Weezy got them cataloged. From the fighters reach down to how many times they dog. Just a tip living, breaking it down slick. Hit you with the knowledge, won't miss a single trick. Uncle Weezy, he the man. Dropping fight facts, got it all on hand. He the stat attack grand. MMA guru, more than just a fan. Balls deep predictions, he be making those calls. Getting in the details, opponents feeling small. From jabs to takedowns, got the whole fight ID. Uncle Weezy spitting truth, no lie, keep it G. Blow the horn, blow the horn. Stat Daddy Weezy not showing no scorn. Fight Night Kingdom, he wearing the crown. Break it down for the peeps, never looking like a clown.
Oh, yes. What's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday afternoon, 3 o'clock Central Time. This Saturday, we've got the UFC 305 pay-per-view event live from Perth, Australia, which is going to be headlined by Dricus DuPlessis and Israel Adesanya fighting for the middleweight championship of the world. It's going to be a great pay-per-view card. There are some action fights on this card. I like it from top to bottom. A lot of spots sticking out. I did a lot of extra research for this card. I've got a ton of notes ready to go for you guys. I hope that you are all ready to get intimate with the details of these fights. Go balls deep on the statistics, the trends, the striking, the grappling, the strength of schedule, who's got the advantages where, what the disadvantages of each fighter are, the conclusions that we come to, the picks, the best bets. We're going to talk about it all today, looking at the statistics and the notes that I've compiled, watching the tape for these fights, looking at all the statistics and how they match up, where these fighters are strong, where they're weak. And we're going to go balls deep and get intimate with all the details of these fights. I'm your host, Uncle Weezy. I've put the work in. I've done the research. Now it's time to benefit from those researches by finding the spots that stick out on these fights so that we can stack the good bets, we can cash our tickets, and we can come out positive this week. There's a lot of work to do here. There's a lot of work. So let's briefly talk about last week, and we're going to do this here, and let's get to the bets. Last week was a week I stayed very, very small in terms of my exposure to the markets. I put the work in, I did the research, and there were just so many greasy fights that I could see going a number of different ways. Couldn't really find conviction on a lot of them. Only bet 3.25 units total. The dog pick of the week, 1 unit bet on Jonata Diniz's money line at plus 185. That cashed because Carl Williams evidently didn't wrestle offensively very much. If I had known that he wasn't going to wrestle in 2 out of the 3 rounds, I think that would have been a much bigger bet. But we cash it anyway at plus 185. That was good. Also had Stephanie Luciano to win in round 3 or by decision at plus 100 for 1 unit. That cashed. I had the Luciano 2-3 KO props. I know that she dropped her in round 3, and then instead of inviting her back to the feet, she kind of sat there and kicked the legs. Glad I didn't watch the fight. I didn't watch any of the fights last week, and then was going to go back and watch them, and then I was like, we got to get to work for UFC 305. So I didn't watch any of them last week. Maybe I'll watch them when we get the week off here in a couple of weeks. But yeah, Luciano 2-3 KO was probably a pretty good bet, but it didn't cash. And then there were 2 really bad bets. We had a quarter unit, so at least it was a small one, on Chelsea Chandler by KO at plus 1,000. So it was the long shot bet. You take the long shot sometimes. That one stunk. And then I had a half unit on Damon Jackson to win by decision. The fight went to decision. So that was half of it, but he didn't even win one round. So 2 bad bets there cost me 0.75 units. And then the Luciano 2-3 KO props weren't bad bets, but they cost me a half unit. So we were up 1.6 units, about a 50% return on investment for the week on a very small week of exposure. But this week I've already got twice as many bets in terms of units on this card as I did last week. So yeah, there's a lot of spots that are sticking out. I've done a lot of research, and I'm looking forward to breaking down this fight with you guys. Let's see who we've got here in the chat. We got M.A. Laren saying, "Oi, Unc, I won't be able to catch you live, but I wanted to thank you in advance for your work. You give great advice that helps, especially to prevent losses. Hope you and your family are well. I appreciate you, M.A. We're coming in here to make some money and wreck the bookies this week. So let's do exactly that. All is well over here at the Uncle Weezy household, and I appreciate you checking in. We got my guy Olajuwon Dream in the room saying, "Oi!" And he's saying Jack will likely win, but Herbert Burns sub prop plus 1,100 and round 1 sub at plus 2,500 seem really juicy to me. Jack's been sub twice, and 6 of 11 Herbert's wins have been by round 1 sub. So yeah, that's a great look there. I've got a bet on that fight that we're going to definitely talk about this week. Let me see why my camera unplugged here. Just give me a second, you guys. We'll get right back to business. And come on. I know you're there. Oh, boy. Okay. Here, let me just hang on a second, you guys. All right. I don't know why that came unplugged, you guys. Let me make sure that the audio is good. Yeah, audio is still good. That's good. That'll come back on in a second here. You'll just be without the screen. Let's get the stats up just so we're looking at something here. We got my guy, Let's Roll 1313 in the room saying, "Oi, yes, what's up, my favorite Unc? I think the most important part for this card is who's going to be the refs. Last week's refereeing was absolutely atrocious. Yeah, I would love to see some consistency with the refs and judges. Yeah, we just don't get it, man. That's something that you're probably never going to see in this sport is consistency from the refs and judges, and that's very unfortunate. We got Remdog saying, and I would love a date with Luana Santos. Probably not going to happen, Remdog, and it's probably not going to happen that we're going to see, consistency from the refs and judges. But either way, at least we can say that, these things probably won't happen, but we can always hope. We got Dixon Sider in the room saying, "Prophet Weeziah, oi, what is going on, Dixon?" We got Jacob Cole in the room saying, "It's Weezy Words of Wisdom Wednesday." That's a lot of W's there, and hopefully there's a lot of W's on our betting tickets for UFC 305. Thanks for checking in, Jacob. We got Olajuwon saying he's got the ultimate 2-leg parlay buster here. He's going with Herbert Burns by sub at plus 1,100. Parlay with Reyes KO at plus 1,400. You can put $2.78 on that to win 500. You gotta love it. We got Litz in the room saying, "Oi!" We've got TH in the room saying, "Oi!" And we got Olajuwon Dream saying Nolan's only loss comes from a knockout. Jenkins been sub twice. Most of Herbert's wins come by sub. Yeah, man, this is it's an interesting week. There are some massive favorites, which means that there's some massive value on the underdogs props. And we got Ucelis in the room saying, "Unc, you think main event doesn't go the distance is likely, or you think it goes the distance?" I think Dricus DuPlessis as a professional has had 2 fights that have seen the scorecards. 2. Sean Strickland and Brad Tavares. And outside of that, every single one of his fights is finished inside the distance. And the way that Dricus fights, I think he's going to open up some opportunities for Israel to land big shots. And he's also going to make Israel fight a fight that he's not entirely comfortable with. So I think fight doesn't go to decision is my lean stylistically for that fight. I know you got to lay a little bit of juice on it, but I do think that fight does finish inside the distance, Ucelis. And Olajuwon saying, "Yes, that Scarface behind me pick is behind you is so sick." Yeah, it's my guy, Tony Montana, my dad's an immigrant. All 4 of my grandparents are immigrants to this country. So we believe in the American dream. And every single one of my grandparents, my dad, they all sat down at some point in my youth and told me about the legend of Tony Montana and the American dream that was possible in this country. So I always remember that, and I keep a picture of Tony close to me at all times so that I can, I can keep that in mind, always keep that in the back of my head that anything is possible in this country. Now, you know what else would be awesomely possible is if we were to finally get the camera going here. Sweet. We got Remdog in the room saying, oh, yes, what's up, Remdog? And we've got Olajuwon Dream saying, is there a free probability tonight? Yes, there is. Sponsored by nobody, of course, but there will be a free probability because it's a UFC pay-per-view. I don't know how long I'm going to keep doing it for free because I really want to get people to the Patreon. Me doing the work for free on YouTube is great for you guys, but it gets me nothing. So I've really got to get more people on the Patreon, and I might have to start kind of holding back that content in order to achieve that objective. And we got Balls Deep, says my guy Moy's Audio. Good to see you in here. Scarface is Weezy's uncle. We appreciate you, Jacob. Hell yeah, man. We got Olajuwon Dream saying also like Leach Decision at plus 800. Yeah, that's interesting because he's a very durable guy. And Prates is not a minute winner. That is an interesting line for sure. Benjamin Burnt saying, when's the UFC coming to Geraldton? I think probably early next year is going to be UFC Geraldton. But I don't have any actual info to suggest that that's the truth. So we will see, Benjamin, but we can all hope. We got 4-ounce Sniper in the room saying, oh, what's up, 4-ounce Sniper? We got Dixon saying, Weezy, you could pass an Albanian gangster in that tracksuit. Greek gangster, my friend, Greek gangster. We border on Albania, but Greece is, a little bit closer to the water, it's a Greek gangster that I look like. We got Jacob saying Weezy look like a loan shark boss. Appreciate that, man. We got Pickle saying, you don't pay, you get bag of oranges. Yeah, that's right. What's up, Pickle Kush? Good to see you in here, man. You got Dogfather saying 50% ROI. That's big time, baby. Yeah, it was a very, very, I would love 50% ROI if I was putting 20 units down, but this one was only 3.2 units or whatever it was. So I'll take it. I'll take it. 50% ROI. You never sneeze at that, but it was a very small exposure week. Colby saying, oi, I smashed Contender Series last night. Looking forward to Saturday. I am too, man. Good job smashing it. Glenbot in the room saying, sup, gentlemen. Sorry, I'm late. Alliteration, a lot of W's. He got it. We got Real Fight Pick saying he's present and accounted for. We got Tarzan Strickland in the room saying DDP and still. We got Glenbot saying that's what we like. A lot of W's for sure, man. We got Cam 13 saying, oi, what's up, Weezy? What's up, Cam? We got Dix Insider saying, Prophet, can we please get a poster for the studio icon Johnny Tightlips? Dude, I love Johnny Tightlips. That guy just, he doesn't talk at all. He's got nothing to say. Why don't you go suck on a lemon is one of my favorite lines. Johnny Tightlips, that's a great one. Makes sense for sure. Hype for tonight. Leech round 3 plus 2,500. That's interesting, man. That's a big number. Probability is fire in the Patreon. Definitely recommended by me. I know Glenbot's always there live when we do probability every single week. We got Remdog saying, quit being cheap, you bastards. Join the Patreon. Use the tools properly, and the sub pays for itself. I appreciate you, Remdog. And yes, it really does. You guys will see all the stats that I have available, but we got to get to work here. And Glenbot saying all the Albanian gangsters claim to be Greek to get the EU visa. You got to love it, man. That is true, man. Greece is in the EU. Albania is not. So yeah, I love it. All right, you guys, let's get to work. We got my screen shared here. I'm going to give you guys a quick look at the write-ups that I have for these fights. And yeah, you might see down there, there's 71 pages here. And that's all this week's fights. But on the Patreon, you get the fight write-ups. You get the statistics, which are the individual fighter statistics here. the advanced matchup where you get each fighter's key individual statistics matched up side by side and compared to the divisional benchmarks. You get the over-under betting model, which gives you the betting lines and implied probabilities. You get the benchmarks for each bet. You get each fighter's performance in relation to each bet individually and combined, and you get the 3 metric comparisons in lines 12, 18, and 19. You get the sum of them in 27, the average of them in 23 or 28 in order to find the best plus EV bets according to the past performances of both fighters and how they relate to the divisional benchmarks and to the combined performance relating to those benchmarks and betting lines. And then in addition, you also get the prop betting model, which has the money lines and then all of the bets for inside the distance, KO, submission, decision, unanimous, and split decision. You get the divisional benchmarks, you get the fighter's performance, you get the betting lines and implied probabilities. You get to compare them all to each other to find out what's overpriced, what's underpriced, and where the market is giving you a little bit of value. And when you can find those value bets that match up with your stylistic read on the fights, that's when you're going to find the bets that make the most sense for you that week. So if you join that Patreon address, scrolling around down there right now, that's where you're going to get access to all of this information. And like I said, I'm messing around with a new methodology for breaking down fights, and it basically what it comes down to is I'm taking the last 3 fights of each fighter. I'm writing a paragraph on each fight about what happened, about the betting line in that fight, and how the performance of each fighter stacked up to their available betting lines. Are they performing better than that? Are they underperforming what the market expectations? Are they right on expectations? So we look at the last 3 fights. We look at the summary of the recency of the recent trends, the recency bias, the market accuracy for each fighter. We look at the strength of schedule of each fighter and how these guys, whether each one of them is taking a step up in competition, a step down, who's more experienced, who's fought the better guys, who has the better wins. We look at a summary of the distance striking stylistic components, the clinch and grappling stylistic components, the strengths and weaknesses of each fighter, the conclusions, the pick and the reasoning, and the best bets. And what this does is it gives me a very intentional way of breaking down the fights. And when I break it down this way and I take this many notes, I make them available on the Patreon for you guys so that you can take a look at and benefit from the research that I'm doing and the benefit from the methodology that I use to break down these fights, so that I take all of the available information into account and come to the best conclusion about who's going to win the fight and how, and come to the best conclusion about what betting lines really kind of best sum up the way that this fight should take place according to the available information that we have. So like I say, guys, if you want to join the Patreon, it's a great way to support the work, but you're not just supporting the work and doing me a favor. You're getting access to a ridiculous amount of information that'll help you become a better MMA gambler that takes more information into account. So, but we got a lot of work to do here. Let's start breaking down these fights. And we're going to first start talking about Stewart Nicoll. He's a -230 favorite going up against Jesus Aguilar, +195. Fight doesn't go to decision. Almost even money here at +105. So if we talk about the trends here, Nicoll's a 29-year-old undefeated prospect. He's 8-0 as a professional, and he's a high-level Brazilian jiu-jitsu player with the necessary wrestling to get fights to the ground. Former XFC flyweight champion, and he went 4-0 in Damian Brown's beatdown promotions. Stewart has finished all but one of his pro wins, and the decision win was in a 5-round fight. So we know this kid also has cardio that to go 25 minutes, even though this fight is only scheduled for 15. I can't find any betting lines on any of his previous fights, but it's safe to say this kid has a ton of hype, and for good reason. So he's not a fighter you're going to get on the cheap. Now, Jesus Aguilar, 28 years old. He's 10-2 as a pro, so he's got an impressive record. And he's won 10 of his last 11 fights. He had a great performance on Dana White's Contender Series versus Erceg Ferreira, a plus 160 underdog to cash that ticket and get his UFC contract. He made his debut as a plus 750 underdog against Tatsuro Taira, and he had a moment or two early before putting himself on his back by going for a guillotine choke, and then he wound up getting choked out himself. And then he cashes a minus 140 favorite versus Shannon Ross, and he looked like a minus 1,000 there. And he won a close fight as a slight underdog versus Mendoza the next time out. So I'd say the market has been slightly undervaluing Jesus Aguilar, and he's almost a plus 200 dog this time around. And you know Aguilar does have that dog in him, and he's going to fight for your money. The strength of schedule, Stewart Nicoll has fought a low level of competition on the Australian regional scene. He's looked phenomenal and dominant against that competition, but he's taken a big step up for this fight. Now, Jesus Aguilar definitely has the strength of schedule advantage here. He's fought in 5-round fights before, but his fights in UWC and Combate, not to mention his 3 fights at the UFC level and 1 Dana White Contender Series fight, surely have him as being the more tested guy at this point in their careers. Now, distance striking, neither of these guys spends much time at distance striking range. Nicoll throws a lot of calf kicks and right hands against orthodox fighters. Aguilar has a very similar style. He looks to take your head off with his right hand. He pressures at range because he's undersized, and he also has heavy calf kicks. I don't think either guy has much of an advantage at range, but I definitely favor Aguilar's power and the fact that he throws that right hand with hate in his heart. And the clinch grappling stylistic components of this fight, both of these guys are dangerous grapplers. Aguilar has solid wrestling, top control, and ground and pound. He loves going to his favorite submission, the guillotine, and he has several finishes with that technique as a professional. Nicoll is a high-level grappler in his own right. I love this kid's cage wrestling, and he drowns his opponents with pressure and takedown and back take attempts. He's got a very high-level submission and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, as well as having the kind of wrestling that can reliably get fights to the mat where he's the most dangerous. I favor Stewart Nicoll's grappling in this fight. Aguilar is easy to take down, and he can be submitted. Nicoll is a prodigy on the mat, and I've seen Aguilar give up way too many takedowns and control time in his fights to make me confident that it will be Nicoll winning the minutes and moments in the grappling exchanges here, as long as he doesn't get caught in Jesus Aguilar's gilly. But I'm sure he's been working guillotine defense for the entire camp because Aguilar predictably goes to that move in every single fight. This kid looks ready to grapple at the UFC level. So the strengths for Nicoll: wrestling and cage grappling, submission grappling, finishing ability. He's got the size and reach advantages, and he's fighting at home in Australia. But the weaknesses for Nicoll, he's got a lack of high-level experience, and this is a big step up in a level of competition for him. And it's his UFC debut, so there's a chance for an adrenaline dump and nerves in this fight. Jesus Aguilar is a year and a half younger. He's the younger fighter, and he's more experienced overall and in the UFC. He's got the strength of schedule advantage. He's got that dog in him. This dude's going to fight for your money. He flashes power, and he has excellent conditioning. But he's fighting in Australia. He's undersized, and in my opinion, he's outmatched in the grappling exchanges here. So I'm on the side of Stewart Nicoll dominating the grappling exchanges in this fight. I don't see this fight taking place at distance striking range much at all. Nicoll's ability to chain together his takedown attempts on the cage, blend his wrestling with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and use his ground and pound to set up his submission attempts is incredibly high level. I think Aguilar can out-grapple guys who are average grapplers, but Nicoll is high level. This is the step up in competition that Stewart deserves, and there's going to be a ton of pressure on him making his UFC debut as a favorite against a more experienced opponent with no quit in him. Jesus is undersized. He has to make the long trip to Australia to fight a local fighter with a ton of hype on him in front of a hostile crowd. There are planets that are closer than Perth, so I love Nicoll having the hometown advantage. I think Nicoll is the much more dangerous grappler, and as such, I think he gets the win. I'm picking Stewart Nicoll to win this fight by second-round submission. I think Nicoll's going to grapple fuck Aguilar. I fear an adrenaline dump or nerves and need to see how Nicoll handles this kind of a step up in competition. But he has the tools to dominate the grappling exchanges of this fight and get a submission. So I kind of like fight doesn't go to decision here, but it's not a great price, so it's not something I'm going to go for. The Nicoll money line is probably a potential parlay piece here, and I have a tracked bet on Stewart Nicoll +3 or -3.5 points handicap at +160. So that is what I'm doing for that fight. We got 71 pages, says Olajuwon. Yeah, it's a lot of notes, you guys. Dixon saying he likes this new angle of approach that you've decided to employ, Prophet. Bravo. Thank you, my man. We've got Glenbot saying, can't wait to read it. That is a tremendous amount of work on the breakdowns, Weezy. Fair play. Appreciate you, Glenbot. Like I say, man, I want to do as much as I can for the Patreon members here. We got James saying, yo, glad I work from home so I get to watch T.O. Weezy. Good to see you hanging out, James. That's a good-looking pit bull you got there, my man. We got Real Fight Pick saying he finally accepts Jesus as his Lord and Savior. Give me that plus money, God. There you go, man. Jeff saying, Weezy, what's up, Jeff? Good to see you hanging out in here. We got Nick saying, what up, Unc? Tuning in from Canada. Me and my brother watch all your episodes. Keep up the awesome content, my guy. Appreciate you, Nick. Thanks for checking in, brother. We got the GOAT, Tajik Bey, checking in from the United Kingdom in the room. What is up, dude? Good to see you hanging out in here. Glenbot saying, I believe was signed as part of a UFC deal to do 2 fight cards a year in Western Australia. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, because Perth is way out there. I mean, like it's the Western side of Australia. So it's even far from Eastern Australia. Like that's a long flight. But then when you got the rest of the world coming from North and South America, it's an incredibly long fight. We got Glenbot saying, sup, Milo. We got Nick saying Dan Hooker by round 3 KO. Odds are extremely generous. That could be interesting, but Gamrot's tough, man. Tajik Bey saying what's up to Glenbot saluting. All right, guys, let's move on to the next fight. It is going to be Song Kenan -175 favorite going up against Ricky Glenn +150 underdog. The fight doesn't go to decision here. About 2/3 probability here at -200. So let's get these stats on the screen for you guys. Once again, they are available at the Patreon along with the 71 pages so far of fight write-ups that I have for this one. But let's talk about the trends here first for Glenn and Kenan. Now, Song Kenan has been priced as an underdog in his last 4 fights, +130 against Jousset, +260 against Bedoya, +525 against Ian Gary, and +165 versus Max Griffin. Now, Glenn, on the other hand, he's been an underdog in 3 of his last 4, and the only time he was priced as a favorite, which was -160 versus Christos Giagos, he was knocked out in the first round. And he comes into this fight at 35 years old, having suffered 2 knockout losses in a row. Glenn is still only 35 years old, but he's looking a little washed up in his last 2 fights, and fighters rarely have a renaissance at this point in their career. And this fight is up at 170 pounds, while Glenn has been getting knocked out by lightweights. Kenan is going to go from being an underdog in 4 straight fights to being at almost 70% implied in this fight. So that's concerning. But Glenn is looking like the kind of fighter that it might be safe to fade, coming off 2 straight knockout losses and being up at welterweight for the first time in his career, when Glenn was a featherweight, actually, back in 2018. Then he moved up to lightweight, and now here he is later in his career, moving up to 170. Kenan has big power for the welterweight division, so I understand why people are willing to lay this kind of juice on Song due to the chin concerns of Ricky Glenn. The strength of schedule for these 2 fighters, both of these guys have solid UFC sample sizes of fights to draw from. Ricky Glenn's 10 UFC opponents have a combined record of 70 and 56, while for Song's 9 UFC opponents, it's 31 wins and 27 losses. Ricky has definitely fought the more experienced opponents overall, but Glenn's UFC wins in particular rate way better than Song's. Glenn's wins are Felipe Nover, Gavin Tucker, Dennis Bermudez, and Joaquim Silva, guys who have combined UFC records of 21 wins and 21 losses. While Song's 5 UFC wins are over Rolando Bedoya, Callan Potter, Derek Krantz, Hector Aldana, and Bobby Nash. Those 5 guys have a combined UFC record of 1 win and 12 losses. So I definitely have to rate Glenn's UFC strength to schedule metrics as being better. But we have to take into account that Song is a career welterweight, while Ricky Glenn fought most of his UFC career at featherweight, and this is going to be his welterweight debut. The distance striking in this fight. Song is a moment winner at distance striking range. He's landed 5 knockdowns in 9 UFC fights while only absorbing 2, and he's finished 3 of his 5 UFC wins by way of KO. Song's distance striking differential, though, it's minus 2.5 per minute, and his distance striking defense is 52%. So he's hittable, low volume, and defensively irresponsible. But if he lands big on you, he has the kind of power that can steal rounds and finish fights. Ricky Glenn also has a negative distance striking differential at negative 1.2, and he's landed as many knockdowns as he's absorbed. Before Glenn's last 2 fights against Yagos and Dober, though, he was 13-0 to the knockout as a pro. So Song Kenan isn't the only fighter with power in this matchup. Glenn stays a little busier at range, and he's more defensively responsible, but he's also been chinnier on average, especially recently, and his distance striking accuracy at 33% is terrible. Now, Glenn is a southpaw, so that could cause some problems for Song. I think this fight should play out at close at distance striking range. I favor Song's moment winning ability and durability while there, and since neither guy has the best is the best minute winner, I'd say I'd slightly favor Song Kenan while this fight is at range. But the grappling here, neither one of these guys has been particularly effective with their offensive grappling games at the UFC level. However, Ricky Glenn spends a higher percentage of his octagon time in control time positions, and he wins a higher percentage of those positions, 42% for Glenn compared to only 20% for Song. And I absolutely favor Glenn's ability to do damage while on top. If Ricky Glenn gets on top, his ground and pound is excellent. We saw that in the Gavin Tucker fight, and we also saw that in the Grant Dawson fight. So if Glenn can get this fight to the ground and get on top, boy, I think he's going to have a lot of success with his ground and pound and really have a great chance to win minutes and moments if he can get the fight into that position. You don't want to be underneath Ricky Glenn. The guy's ground and pound is extremely underrated. Now, if we're talking about strengths and weaknesses for each fighter, Song Kenan is the natural 170-pounder, while this is Glenn's 170-pound debut at the age of 35. The finishing ability is more on the Song Kenan side. 84% as a pro compared to 73% for Glenn. And he's finished 60% of his UFC wins has Song Kenan compared to only 25% for Glenn. Song Kenan's got the power advantage here as well. But Song Kenan is not a good minute winner. He's low volume and he's dependent on winning moments. He's 2-3 to the decision as a pro, while Glenn is 6-4 to the decision. And Ricky Glenn, he's got the experience advantage. He's slightly more experienced overall and in the UFC. He's got the strength to schedule advantage. Even though Glenn has fought at 145 and 155, while Song's been at 170, the strength to schedule metrics stack up better for Ricky Glenn due to those ass wins for Song Kenan. Now, Ricky Glenn's weaknesses, the chin, the size, and he's making the long trip to Perth here while Song Kenan is about in the same time zone. So this feels a bit like a 1-800-GAMBLER fight to me. Song is a moment winner with unimpressive UFC wins. He's not the kind of guy you lay heavy juice on against anybody with a pulse. The combined UFC records of the 5 guys Song has beaten is 1 win and 11 losses. He loses minutes at range and in the grappling exchanges. If he doesn't land the big shot, almost anyone can outwork him and outland him at range. Ricky's the more experienced guy. He has power of his own, and I'd say he's the guy more likely to win minutes and moments in the grappling exchanges, even though I think this fight does mostly take place at range. I don't like the recent chin concerns Glenn has shown, especially now that he's moving up to 170. And the long trip to Perth is never encouraging. So even though I don't want to lay juice on Song's money line, I can't see getting to Glenn's money line unless it gets way cheaper. I think this fight is close on the feet. I see Glenn staying busier, and both guys do have power. I think Glenn is more likely to win minutes and moments in the grappling exchanges, but trying to wrestle guys up at 170 when he was reluctant to wrestle at 155 makes it unlikely that we see a lot of offensive grappling on either side here. I think this is a boring distance striking match between two lackluster fighters on the wrong side of 33 years old. I think the value is on the Glenn money line if he doesn't get bonked, but I'll pick Song Kenan to win a greasy decision and with very little confidence. I do like the overs here. I don't have much faith in either guy's ability to finish anyone with a pulse at this level. The over 1.5 rounds at minus 144, that's a trifecta bet on my over-under betting model. As you can see right here, all three metric comparisons are in the green. We're getting about almost 19% in total savings. And the fight goes to decision at plus 170. That's something I bet earlier in the week. About half of Song Kenan's fights have went to decision at the UFC level. And for Ricky Glenn, it's 7 of 10. So 11 of 19, or 58% of their fights have seen the scorecards at this level. And like I said, I don't have a ton of faith as Ricky Glenn as a finisher at 170 pounds, and Song Kenan as a finisher. I mean, like, Song Kenan's okay, but you don't bet big money on this guy to finish fights at this level against anybody with a pulse. So fight goes to decision at plus 170. That's a trifecta bet on the template. That's a bet that I already made this week. So I do like non-violence in this fight, and the pick is going to be Song Kenan to win this one by decision. All right. See what you guys are saying in the chat here. We got let's see here. Kyle Kelly is asking, does Gamrot pay off that 9,300 salary? Potentially, yes. If Gamrot wins the fight, he's going to get a ton of takedowns and a lot of control time, and hopefully a lot of little tiny strikes on the ground, because that piles up points as well. I think if he gets his game off, he could potentially pay off that salary. Olajuwon had Song parlayed, but he cashed out. Dude makes me nervous, but he thinks he'll get the KO. Ricky Glenn looks like a corpse of a man. He looks so slow. Song vicious KO incoming. We got Zach Johnson saying, "Oi, what up, Bunk?" And we got also Call Me Husker saying, "Oi." And we've got Glinbot saying, with the trends of first 4 or 5 on pay-per-view mostly going to decision, the under scares me, but it makes sense for the matchup. Yeah, I'm not laying juice, which is big juice on the fight doesn't go to decision. Relying on Song Kenan to finish a UFC opponent. I mean, I just don't think he's good enough. If he catches Ricky Glenn, fine. But remember, Ricky Glenn's coming off 2 straight KO losses. But prior to that, he had never been knocked out in over 30 professional fights. So going up means he'll probably be a little bit more durable. We'll see. Remdog saying Song's wins may be trash, but Ricky just does not pass the eye test for me. Price came in enough for him to play Song's money line. I don't trust Song, but he should win by KO. Remdog, I think you're right, mate. And hi, says Glinbot. Remdog saying, what's up? Glinbot's always showing up, man. Song money line was down to minus 160 here earlier. That's much cheaper. Yeah. Song wins, but this is probably going to be the worst fight of the card. Agreed. Do I think Song likes to sing? Because I hear some sweet chin music coming, baby. I hope it doesn't. I hope this one is a boring fight that goes to full 15 and I'll cash a plus 170. But yeah, Song by decision is the pick, you guys. Let's move on to the next fight here. It is going to be Tom Big Train Nolan at minus 1150 going up against Alex Reyes at plus 750. Fight doesn't go to decision here, minus 1600. So I've got a ton of shit written on this fight, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But we'll go through the important stuff. The market couldn't be lower on Alex Reyes right now, and with good reason. Dude's been knocked out in the first round in his last 2 fights. He took 6 years off between the Mike Perry fight and the Campbell fight to rehab several different injuries. To be fair, Reyes was a massive underdog in both fights, but he basically paid off that price tag by looking like a massive underdog and getting knocked out. Nolan is currently like minus 1150. So this line is a little wide. Nolan was a minus 350 favorite versus Nick Mata, and he let people, once a line gets to this price and the under 1.5 rounds is priced at minus 350, it's going to be really hard to find value on the Nolan side at all this week. Strength of schedule, I mean, we don't really fucking even know where Alex Reyes is at this point in his career. I mean, he's a complete mystery. We've got, over the last 7 years, this guy has 5 minutes of fight tape. I mean, we got to be really honest with ourselves. We have no idea what this guy is going to look like in there. And I mean, like, obviously Nolan is 4 inches taller than this guy. He's a southpaw. He's the much more dangerous striker. You see Reyes, in his tape, and he's kind of like dancing around. He moves a lot on the outside, tries to be a hard target, tries to mix in the wrestling. And once he gets on top, he likes to go for that arm triangle submission. So yeah, I mean, like, Reyes is going to have to really be very elusive here. And because Nolan's got a lot more power, and it's going to be hard to be elusive because Tom Nolan is not somebody that like just sits on the outside and likes to maintain range with his length and his kicks. Like, he actually pressures. He actually gives his opponents opportunities to find his chin in the pocket because he's so aggressive. So I don't think Reyes is going to be able to like pick and poke on the outside in this fight. Nolan's going to fucking track him down and try to murder him. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Let's not even fucking talk too long about this one. Tom Nolan's 13 years younger. He's 4 inches taller. Southpaw versus orthodox. He's got all the power in this matchup. He's the much better striker in this matchup. He can be countered in the pocket. He gets reckless and defensively irresponsible in the pocket when he's exchanging. And actually, Alex Reyes, one of the things that he likes to do is counter in the pocket. So there's always a chance that Reyes could land a nasty counter on this kid that he doesn't see coming and sleep him. But Alex Reyes has been knocked out in 3 of his 4 pro losses, and he's coming off 2 consecutive knockout losses, and he's been racked with injuries for years. So his durability is in serious question. I'm picking Tom Nolan by first-round knockout. Reyes just isn't dangerous enough in order for me to be worried that Nolan doesn't do what he's supposed to do, but I will not be parlaying or playing any of Nolan's props straight this week. He's just not proven enough, and he's too defensively irresponsible to justify a minus 1150 price tag. So I don't think there's any value here on any of the bets for unders and anything on the Tom Nolan side. If you think that Reyes is live in any way, there are plenty of value on his props. You feel free to play them, but this is a fight that I won't be betting on at all. But the pick is going to be Tom Nolan by first round KO. Right. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Zach saying none of Ricky's power will transfer up, but he's going to feel that 170 power. Yeah. Nolan's getting knocked out. Really? You think that would be wild, man? If Nolan did get slept, you could hear a pin drop in Perth, I'm sure. That would be something that would absolutely ruin everybody's day, because I'm sure he's parlayed up so many times. Dirty Reg saying everyone piles against Ricky, and maybe for good reason, but I'll be the guy to at least pick him to upset win here. And I have no interest in betting that, though. Yeah, like, I'm going with the fight goes to decision, Dirty Reg, and that's kind of almost like a de facto, like, I think Glenn's going to overperform market expectations here. So I'm with you. The way I'm not betting Ricky Glenn is by betting the fight goes to decision, because I think the fight's going to be closer than what the betting line suggested is. 1,400 plus 1,400 for Reyes KO. My guy Olajuwon Dream likes those contrarian bets and the fat plus money that you get on them. JP saying, oh yes, well, good afternoon, Weezy. What's up, JP? Good to see you hanging out. Glenbot. Okay, hear me out. Almost 65% of 155s go over 1.5. So when the under 1.5 got to minus 400, I went the other way and played the over 1.5 at plus 240. Yeah, it's one of those ones that stylistically I just don't see it going over at all. because Reyes' durability is seriously in question, and Tom Nolan is ridiculously aggressive, and he leaves himself open to be finished himself. So stylistically, I love the under, but there's no fucking way that you bet a minus 350 line on an under 1.5. So yeah, can't do it. So I see why you're going the other way. We got Pores saying, I know some people who like a shot on Reyes just because they think Nolan could be chinned, but I'll just save my money. I hear you. I'm going to do the same thing, man. I'm going to save my money, keep it away from this fight. I'm a degenerate that parlayed Tom in all of my plays. Shame on me. And then the bell. Shame, says Rem Talk. All right, guys, let's move on to the next fight. There are 72 of you live hanging out here on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment down below, and please consider joining the Patreon so you get access to the ridiculous amount of notes. I mean, like, who wants 71 pages of notes? You want to know about Jack Jenkins and Herbert Burns, the last 3 fights for Jenkins right there, described in blow-by-blow detail. The last 3 fights for Herbert Burns, explained in blow-by-blow detail there, the summary of the recent trends. You want all that information, man? Join the Patreon. I'll give it to you. $25 a month. Let's get it. But let's move on to this next fight. It is going to be Jack Jenkins versus the ever durable Herbert Burns. We've got Jenkins is a minus 800 favorite here, juiced to the tits. Herbert Burns plus 550. Fight doesn't go to decision here. Also juiced up at minus 600. So, this is an interesting one. I've got a ton of notes, and I'm going to actually read them for this fight. So, we've got Herbert. So let's talk about the trends, right? The trends of these guys' recent performances. Herbert Burns is a joke right now. His reputation for being lazy, having terrible cardio, and quitting in fights due to not being durable or mentally strong is almost unmatched in the UFC right now. And I'm not joking. I'm not saying this to be a dick. When you think quitter right now, and I say, hey, if you have to put the word quitter next to like a couple of UFC fighters' names, I mean, like Herbert Burns is going to be pretty high up on that list for anybody that watches a lot of UFC. Burns was a minus 300 favorite in the Daniel Pineda fight, and we saw how quickly he could be made to look like an amateur the second things aren't going his way. And once the secret was out that this guy had 1 round of cardio and no heart, he was priced as an underdog in his next 2 fights. Now at 36 years old, Herbert is being sent to Perth, Australia to fight Jack Jenkins, a popular Australian fighter. Jenkins has decent amount of hype on him. He's been priced as a favorite in 2 of his last 3 fights, but his UFC wins are against bottom of the barrel guys like Don Shainis. And while Jamal Emmers is a solid win, a lot of people thought he lost that fight, so he still has a lot to prove at this level. The market couldn't be any lower on Herbert Burns right now, so maybe a Burns to win in round 1 shot could have some value, but Burns' reputation for quitting precedes him, and the fight doesn't go to decision is priced at minus 600 for exactly that reason. When we talk about strength of schedule, Burns has 2 more fights at the UFC level, and he's definitely fought the more experienced guys like Landwehr, Pineda, Evan Dunham, Bill Algeo, and Julio Arce, compared to Jenkins, who fought Don Shainis, Jamal Emmers, and Chepe Mariscal. So Burns is the guy with the more tested resume at this level for sure. While this fight's at distance striking range, I rate Jenkins as the much more technical striker. He's far more equipped to win minutes due to his cardio and durability advantages, and his distance striking metrics bear that out, as he's got a positive 1.7 distance striking differential compared to -1 for Burns. I love Jenkins' calf kicks, and I think they make a huge difference in this fight because Burns has injured his knees easily before, and he's a notorious quitter. I mean, like, I think it was the Evan Dunham fight. He finished that fight in the first round by triangle choke, or maybe it was an arm bar. But either way, when he couldn't even stand back up, he hurt his knee putting this guy in a triangle. The same thing happened in the Algeo fight. He puts him in a triangle, and then he can't stand up 3 minutes later. He injured his knee there. So, I mean, like, I think the Jack Jenkins with those heavy low leg kicks, man, I mean, if he's landing those against Herbert Burns and Herbert Burns hasn't fixed the quitting problem yet, that this fight could end very quickly because Burns has already had so many lower leg injuries that it's not even funny. The way that Jack Jenkins kicks lower legs, knowing that this guy has broken people's fibulas 3 different times as a professional. This is a bad matchup for Herbert Burns, man. He needs to get an early takedown and an early submission. Otherwise, he's fucked. But Burns is a high-level BJJ player, you know? He's live to take your back and submit you early in fights. We've seen Jenkins get taken down and controlled, and Burns does look for takedowns early in fights. I think Burns will be the better grappler for as long as he has gas, which could be 3 to 6 minutes. Then he will flop to his back and probably just absorb ground and pound. I favor Burns grappling early and Jenkins grappling late. So Jenkins, 6 years younger than Herbert Burns. He's got a conditioning advantage. He's got a durability advantage. He's a hometown fighter, and he's got the minute winning and the moment winning probably in the striking exchanges because of the calf kicks mostly. And then, but he's got a lack of high-level wins, this Jack Jenkins. So that's, you know, a bit of a problem because Herbert Burns is a more experienced opponent. He's more experienced at the UFC level, having 2 more fights. Herbert Burns has got the grappling and the BJJ advantage and the early finishing advantage, but his conditioning, his heart, and his durability are as bad as it gets in the UFC. So this is a tough row to hoe for not for Gilbert Burns, but for Herbert Burns. He has to make a 20-plus hour flight to Perth while cutting weight, fight in front of a hostile crowd against a local fighter, and his conditioning and his durability are absolutely terrible. Burns is 36 years old. He's not going to improve his conditioning and start pushing through tough situations in fights. He is who he is. He's a guy who is completely uncomfortable with the act of fighting, and he's going to look for that door as fast as humanly possible. Whether that means him getting an early knockout or sub, or if he tries and fails, he will gas out and quit early in the second round. I favor Jenkins in the striking exchanges, and I think his calf kicks combined with Burns' penchant for suffering knee injuries in the first round of fights makes Jenkins a first or second round KO the most likely possibility. However, I also see early finish upside on the Burns side as he can get takedowns early in fights, and when he does, he's very aggressive going for submissions, and he's always looking to get out of the cage as fast as possible. So I think the under 1.5 rounds at plus money is a fantastic play this week. My biggest bet of the week by far, 3 units on the under 1.5 rounds here. I got plus 105 on Bet Online Sportsbook. Burns's ability to finish fights early with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu and really with his pretty powerful striking too is definitely in play, as is Burns' ability to quit and look for that door as soon as humanly possible. You know, so I love Jenkins' ability to get a finish with leg kicks, get a knockout. And I like Burns' ability to maybe get an early sub. So the under 1.5, it's weird, right? Because you got Tom Nolan and Alex Reyes priced at minus 350 for the under 1.5. And then I see this one for the under 1.5 priced at plus 105. And it's a Herbert Burns fight. Herbert Burns has 5 UFC fights. Not one of them saw the third round. And this guy has, you know, like, even the Pineda fight, he was getting 7 shades of shit beaten out of him. He just actually lasted past 7.5 minutes in that one. I love this. I mean, like, to get it at almost even money to me is an absolute steal. So my best bet is under 1.5 rounds at plus 105. I like Jenkins to win in rounds 1 or 2. And the official prediction is going to be Jack Jenkins to win this fight by second round KO. See what you guys are saying in the chat here. Yeah, all right, movie. All right, Weezy, let's move on to Luana. Yeah, for sure, man. We got Olajuwon saying Herbert round 1 sub. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's a great one. It's a great look this week. He's always live for a round 1 sub. Bros, you all need to check out the first fight on Dana White's Contender Series, Week 2. I'm going to have to see the Week 2 one. Week 1 was really good. I mean, that was a fantastic card. Under 2.5 parlayed, says Lajuan Dream. I like it. Call Me Husker saying Herbert Burns is the exact picture, and that comes up when you search quitter in the MMA dictionary. The picture of Gilbert carrying Herbert out of the octagon, to be exact. Dude, that's a very, very perfect way to sum up Gilbert Burns. Yeah, this sport is crazy. I can't make Jack Jenkins a minus 800 over any UFC competition. Yep. That's why I'm playing this under 1.5. It actually sums up 100% of Herbert Burns' win condition, which is a finish. I mean, if he doesn't get a finish in round 1, he's going to lose round 2 and 3. So, or he's going to get finished in round 3 if he even wins round 2. So, yeah, man, it's tough. The way to get the value is to bet the under here. I feel like Herbert or Reyes is going to get an upset. It could happen, man. I just want to see Herbert make his big brother proud. If he does it in round 1, I'm fine with it. 4-ounce sniper. JP Taylor saying, could we see a strategic weight miss by Burns or not so strategic? Yeah, I don't think he'll even make weight, to be honest with you. Post USADA Burns coming with the 3-round cardio. That would be hilarious, dude. I would feel like such an asshole, and I'd be out 3 units on an over if he doesn't get the finish. Herbert Burns, your money. Give me the guys who don't quit in 3-round fist fights for sure, man. We got JP saying, what's the under 1.5 now? I think it's like minus 110. Herbert Burns under 1.5 is minus 110 right there on Bet Online Sportsbook. And I think that's where it is on other places as well. And D Spearman is in the room. What is up, D? Good to see you hanging out in here, my man. And Groove saying, just how good is Jenkins? He's a solid fighter. I like his stand-up. He can mix in the wrestling. I think that he's got a diverse MMA toolbox in order to, he can go in different directions to win rounds against different opponents. Like the kickboxing, like the durability, like the pace. And I like his ability to be able to mix in wrestling against lower-level grapplers. So I think Jenkins is solid. But I think that this is more people betting against Herbert Burns than betting on Jack Jenkins. Obviously, 800 is really wide. But let's talk about the next fight here. And it is going to be Casey O'Neill against Luana Santos. Casey O'Neill is a plus 127 underdog. Luana Santos, the minus 147 favorite. Fight doesn't go to decision for this one at plus 180. All right. Let me get my notes up for you guys here. 87 of you hanging out live in here. I hope you're enjoying the show. Let's talk about trends. Both of these ladies have been priced as favorites in their last 3 fights. However, Santos has covered that price tag in every single time, while O'Neill has been significantly overvalued by the market in her last 3 fights and hasn't even come close to paying off her price tag in any of them. I have to think the market is going to slightly overvalue Santos' skill set here. And we have to keep in mind that Santos is taking this fight on less than 2 weeks' notice and will be making the long trip to Perth to take this fight in front of a hostile crowd. So this should be the best chance to get O'Neill at a fair price, seeing as she's been way overvalued by the market in her last 3 fights. But now that she's on a 2-fight losing streak, her price has become a lot more affordable. She's taking this fight in Australia. She is an Australian against somebody that just fought a month ago. This is a very quick turnaround for Luana Santos. She just fought Maria Agapova less than a month, or I think about 31 days ago at this point right now. So it's a very interesting situation here because quick turnaround, long flight to Perth, 2 fights in a month, 2 weight cuts in a month. That's a lot of narrative issues that are standing in the way of her giving her best performance over a 3-round fight here. So the strength of schedule, Casey has 3 more fights at the UFC level than Santos does, and she's fought the more experienced brand of UFC competition in comparison to Santos. The combined record of combined UFC records of Santos' 3 opponents, Juliana Killer Miller, Stephanie Egger, and Maria Agapova, is 6 wins and 10 losses, while O'Neill's 6 UFC opponents, Shanna Dobson, Laura Procopio, Antonina Shevchenko, Roxanne Modafferi, Jennifer Maia, and Ariane Lipsky is 23 and 30. I'd rate the recent competition these ladies has faced in favor of Casey, as I see Lipsky, Maia, and Modafferi as being much more experienced and well-rounded than Santos's 3 opponents thus far in Miller, Egger, and Agapova. I definitely rate O'Neal as being the fighter with the tougher UFC strength of schedule, especially lately. Distance striking, both of these ladies throw and land a ton of volume at distance striking range. But O'Neal's distance striking numbers come against a much higher level of competition than Santos's do. Santos's 3 opponents, Juliana Miller, Stephanie Egger, and Maria Agapova, are all awful strikers, with the exception of Agapova. But Maria was in a really bad place going into that fight, and that fight took place entirely in the grappling realm anyway. And that fight was at distance striking range for less than a minute. So Casey is faster, she's more technical, and she throws straighter punches. I think Casey's going to look much better at distance striking range in this fight, especially in the second half of the fight when Santos, who was already slow, starts to get tired and slow down due to the quick turnaround, due to the long trip, due to the 2 fights in a month, due to the 2 weight cuts in a month. I see O'Neal being the better striker right off the bat, but I see her getting better as the fight goes on with her striking and Santos getting worse. Now, clinch grappling, Santos is a high-level judo player, so you don't want to go into the clinch with Luana Santos. She's got great throws, and it's her go-to way to get takedowns when she wants to grapple. Casey's done a better job of outworking her opponents in significant strikes landed when she's in control time positions. But if I were Casey and I wanted to keep this fight standing, I would avoid clinching up with Santos. Both of these ladies have shown the ability to win minutes and moments with their grappling, but I favor Casey's open mat entries and freestyle wrestling, while I think Santos has the better judo and the ability to win minutes and get takedowns from the clinch. Now, Casey O'Neal's strengths, she's got the overall and UFC experience advantages. She's got the better conditioning. She's got the more technical and clean striking and the strength of schedule advantages. Luana Santos is 2 years younger. She's better in the clinch with her judo, and she's the better submission grappler. But she's got sloppy striking. She's got poor conditioning. And she has, like I say, I've said it 3 times already, 2 fights in a month, 2 weight cuts in a month, short notice, and a long trip to Perth, Australia. So this is not good situation to take a fight under. I mean, you're talking about over 24 hours of flying from Brazil to Perth. So it is not an ideal situation. It should not be lost on us how big of a deal it is to take a fight on 2 weeks' notice at your natural weight class. You're going to have to do the full weight cut in Perth, Australia, making a short notice turnaround as she just fought on July 13th. So 2 weight cuts in that period of time, combined with a 20-plus hour flight to Perth while cutting weight, is a bad combination of circumstances for a fighter who hasn't shown the best conditioning in the first place. Casey's more experienced overall and in the UFC. She's the cleaner striker, a solid wrestler and minute winner in the grappling exchanges, and she's faced the more experienced brand of UFC competition with the better win-loss ratios. I like that Casey's fighting at home. I think people will be surprised how much better Casey is at range in this fight. And when you consider the fact that Casey has excellent conditioning and Santos tends to slow down later in fights, and then you also remember that this fight is in Australia in front of a hostile crowd, and there are too many roadblocks in Santos' way to price her as a favorite in this fight. I think Casey does the better work at range, stops the takedown attempts of Santos, pieces her up at range while looking better and better as the fight goes on. I think the experience, conditioning, and striking deficiencies are going to be too much for Santos to overcome in Perth, Australia. And I like Casey O'Neal to win this fight. And I think she's going to get a late finish via 3rd round knockout against Luana Santos here. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Parlay the over 1.5 for this fight. Okay. Luana's the best bet this week, says JP Taylor. We got under 2.5 rounds, Burns Jenkins, over 1.5 O'Neal Santos, under 2.5 Rozenstruik Tuivasa, minus 105 for 2 units. Olajuwon's parlaying those 3. Paul said, don't you dare pick Casey O'Neal, Australian. Yeah, I know she's Scottish, but like she lives in Australia. So we got JP saying O'Neal ain't the same after the ACL reconstruction. Luana's the real deal. Fake Australian, says Paul. Santos is a black belt in judo, blue belt in BJJ, and a light blue with black and blue stripe Muay Thai striker. There you go. Remdog saying in her first 3 fights, Casey had over 1,100 seconds of control time and all finishes. In her last 3, she's had a whopping total 22 seconds. The results from those fights indicate that she needs takedowns. But if you look at the distance striking exchanges in Casey's last fight, and especially against Jennifer Maia as well, she looked very good there. And Jennifer Maia is a very good striker. I thought the Maia fight could have went either way. So I think that O'Neal is getting a little bit better with the striking. And Ariane Lipski, we're not going to compare Ariane Lipski's striking with Luana Santos. Please don't do that. Ariane's a very powerful and technical kickboxer. Luana Santos still has a lot of work to go in that direction. Santos has never had a job. And to control the win, which she won't get against Santos. Yeah, I don't think she's going to get control time either. She's been an athlete since the age of 8, says Santos, or about Santos. I think her cardio is fine. It looked awful against Stephanie Egger. Fucking awful. So I don't think it's fine. I don't want to make assumptions. If I want to find out how somebody's cardio is, I want to see how they look in the 3rd round of a fight. Yikes, man. She looked awful against Egger. Absolutely awful. So yeah. And people might be like, oh yeah, it was up a weight class on short notice. This fight is on short notice. So I think that Casey O'Neal, who I know has went into round 3 looking phenomenal, is going to have the much better cardio here. Lit saying, got to be King Casey for me. Hope that DraftKings gives a solid plus 3.5 number. Poor is saying neither of these fighters have an OnlyFans, so we're missing some important metrics. I'm just going to pass. Remdog saying the outside variables are the only reason Casey's side has any legs, and maybe some improvements from the long layoff. Santos does. The boys found it in the Discord last night. Okay, she does have an OnlyFans. I like it. I'm playing his double chance. The leech is super durable. Prates by decision feels like the play. Thoughts? We'll talk about that one. Jacob Cole saying I got Casey as well. Like Santos, under 87.5 fantasy on Prize Picks. Yeah, that's not a bad look because she's going to need grappling to succeed. Groove, Casey bounce back here. Unlikely. I bet on it, though. Casey looked bad against Roxanne. Yeah, that was when she hurt her knee, though. Alex Ramirez, the general in the room. Achromatic saying, Nick, I think Prates will attack the body. He's very good at that. The under 1.5 in the Burns fight is minus 110 at Bet Rivers too. Weezy. Yeah, that's a good look there. I love that spot, you guys. Roxanne would have won that fight, but she wanted to stand and bang for her retirement fight. Yeah, that was a mistake. Do you think the Vegas elevation had something to do with that? Perth is 32 meters elevation. Yeah, Vegas elevation there is Vegas is a desert. There's no elevation there. So, yeah, and there's not much at Perth, I don't think either. 32 meters, definitely not a lot of elevation. All right. Let's move on to the next fight. Did I get that? Yeah, O'Neal KO3. There we go. All right. The next fight is going to be Josh Culibao at minus 140 going up against Ricardo Ramos plus 120. Fight doesn't go to decision for this one at minus 125. All right. Advanced matchup. Let me get a sip of this coffee. Another sip. All right, let's get to work. Josh Culibao. Let's talk about the trends in this fight. There we go. Both guys have lost 2 of their last 3 fights, and both guys have let down bettors that have supported them in recent fights. Ramos is coming off 2 straight first-round submission losses, both by arm and guillotine. So the market has to be extremely low on him right now because you usually don't see Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts tapping the arm in guillotines. But, I mean, Ramos has done it twice in a row. Culibao did not pay off his price tag in either of his last 2 fights either. So even though the Silva fight was very close and could have gone either way, I feel like the market has done a decent job of pricing both guys. Ramos has had 5 more fights at the UFC level, but on the aggregate, these guys have fought a similar level of competition at the UFC level. These guys have 2 shared opponents, Charles Jourdain and Laurent Murphy. Both guys lost to Murphy, but Culibao lost by decision while Ramos was finished in the first round. And Culibao's fight with Jourdain was scored a draw while Ramos was finished in the first round by Jourdain. So I think that these guys have been tested at an equal level in the UFC and that these guys are well matched. But against the like opponents that they've had, Josh Culibao has definitely performed better than Ricardo Ramos has. So I would give him a slight strength to schedule advantage here with the slightly better ratio and very similar ratios in their wins. At distance striking range, both of these guys are talented kickboxers. We've seen Ramos get 2 knockout wins by way of spinning back elbow, and that's a very dangerous technique that he goes to in every single fight. Over the long term, Culibao has proven to be the better minute winner as he boasts a positive 1.2 distance striking differential compared to negative 0.8 for Ramos. And Culibao's distance striking accuracy at 41% compared to 35% for Ramos is much better. The defense is much better. So, Culibao's metrics look a little bit better at distance striking range, the positive distance striking differential, the better accuracy, the better defense, the similar power differential. And let's see, Culibao is the taller and longer guy as well. So I like him to stay a little bit busier at range and be a little bit more efficient. Both guys have that 3-to-1 knockdown ratio in the UFC, and both guys have power. So I feel like it should be close at range with Culibao doing a little bit more work. And then in the clinch and in the grappling, I like Ramos a lot more. I think he's much more likely to win minutes and moments with his wrestling and his BJJ. Ramos has 7 career wins by submission, while Culibao only has 1. And Ramos has been a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt for a very long time. Ramos gets 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, while Culibao gets 0. And Culibao only wins 16% of the control time positions his fights have been in, while Ramos is winning 58%. I do see an opportunity for Ramos to use his wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to win minutes if he doesn't like how the distance striking exchanges are going. And I see those distance striking exchanges as being fairly close. Josh has a solid get-up game and good submission defense, so I don't see Ramos getting a submission, but I do see him potentially winning minutes with his grappling here. Now, Culibao is a little bit bigger. He's 1 inch taller. He's going to have a 1 inch reach advantage over Ramos. He's got the durability advantage. Only finished once as a professional, and it was up a weight class on short notice against Jalen Turner, a guy with a 100% finish rate. Ramos has 6 career losses, and he's been finished in 5 of them. So he taps fast to guillotines, and he's been knocked out twice in the UFC as well. So Culibao, the more durable guy, and he's the local fighter. Ramos making a very long trip to Perth, while Culibao is a native Aussie. So the trip's going to suck for Ramos, and the crowd's going to be behind Josh here. And the minute winning in the striking exchanges is also on the on the Culibao side. He's a little bit better in all distance striking categories with similar power numbers. Now, Culibao is losing minutes in the grappling exchanges. I think that's his biggest weakness here. Josh gives up entirely too many minutes on the mat, and Ramos is an aggressive grappler who can get takedowns and be aggressive going for submissions. Now, Ramos is 1 year younger. He's got the UFC experience advantage with 5 more fights and 15 more minutes of octagon time, and he's the better grappler in this fight, but I fade Ramos's durability. So it's an interesting fight. Ramos is younger. He's more experienced at the UFC level. He's flashy and powerful on the feet, and he has the ability to win minutes and moments with his wrestling and his grappling. Ramos is also easy to finish, and he's tapped to arm-in guillotine chokes in his last 2 fights, which is very concerning. In addition, he has to make the brutally long trip to Perth to fight an Aussie in front of a hostile crowd. Culibao is a well-rounded fighter who's been tested at a similar level to Ramos in the UFC. He's an accurate, powerful, and technical striker who has good size and length for the division. Culibao's fighting at home, and he's the far more durable fighter. So those are a couple of reasons to like him here, but I think this fight is going to be close. Culibao isn't much of a finisher, and Ramos isn't outmatched anywhere this fight goes against a generalist like Culibao. I favor Ramos' ability to win minutes in the grappling exchanges, which makes me feel as if there is value in Ramos' money line around plus 130. And because Culibao is so durable and has good submission defense, I like Ramos by decision at better than plus 300. I think both guys are going to have success at distance striking range, and both guys have the ability to win minutes or moments. However, Culibao's tendency to lose a lot of minutes in the grappling exchanges is what makes me favor the Ramos side outright. So I'm going to pick Ramos to win this fight by decision. I think the striking exchanges are close enough that Ramos' advantage in the ability to win minutes with his grappling will be enough to bank the rounds of this fight and win a decision against the very durable Josh Culibao. So I'm going with Ricardo Ramos to win this fight by decision. Let's see. Oh, is it 2,000 feet? I had no idea. Surprised Culibao's grappling metrics are not more red. Not a fan. Yeah, he's fairly efficient in those grappling metrics. But definitely, like you look here, there's a lot of red right there. 6% control time for 32% control time allowed, and these guys have fought a similar level of competition. I think their distance striking metrics, while they favor Culibao in the moment winning, it's going to be close. So I really do believe that Ramos is the side here. Josh decision makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I could see that too. I just worry about Ramos. He just gets finished so often. That makes me, worry that if Culibao does get the win, that he might have found a finish. Let's see. Dirty Reg saying, I can save you the trouble. Ramos won't like the striking game with Culibao at all. He better wrestle and grapple. And I think he will, dude. He's averaging 5 takedown attempts per 15 minutes. He gets 3 of them. He's a pretty active grappler, but only 25% of his fights are taking place in control time positions. So that number is going to need to be a lot higher, I think, if you're right about Culibao being a much better striker. Josh don't need to use the grappling. His striking is very good. Yes, it is. Ramos will probably fuck himself again. Josh capitalizes on shit like that. Yep. Baby Sharp likes Ramos. Ucelis got to finish this workup. Love listening while working. Great points. Appreciate you, Ucelis. Thanks for checking in. Dirty Reg saying, I don't play underdogs by decision. I get burned way too much doing that. I make dogs finish fights. I'm afraid that the grappling and wrestling disadvantage Culibao will be at, so I won't play this at all. Kareem saying, I think Ramos is dirty. I didn't believe he lost the way he did. Yeah, I know, man. Yeah, he's lost twice in a row, man. It's crazy by that guillotine. I've got Casey by 3rd round knockout, actually, but I think Casey by decision is another good look as well. I just think that I'm not a believer in Santos's cardio yet, and I think that she's going to be outmatched on the feet here, so I actually see Casey getting a late finish. And Baby Sharp saying, what's up to Ucelis? All right, let's move on to the next fight here. An interesting one is we got Junior Tafa at minus 130 going up against Valter Walker, the plus 110 underdog. Fight doesn't go to decision here, sitting at minus 200 for this fight. So let's talk about the trends. The market isn't particularly high on either of these guys right now. Tafa's coming off being destroyed by DeLima last time out, but that was on 1 day's notice. So obviously we can't really take much from that performance. Tafa more than paid off his price tag versus Parker Porter and looked like a pick'em versus Usman, and that fight could have went either way. Now, Valter Walker is fresh off laying an egg in his UFC debut. He lost to Lucas Dresky. He was a minus 250 favorite in that fight. Valter did out-wrestle Dresky and controlled him for over 7 minutes, but he got outworked at distance. Valter was undefeated as a pro going into his UFC debut at 11-0, so I'm not surprised he was overpriced in his UFC debut. Now that he's coming off a loss, he's priced a lot more reasonably. For the strength of schedule for these guys outside of the UFC, it's Valter Walker who has more experience against higher level opponents. However, in the UFC, it's Tafa who has 3 fights compared to only 1 for Walker. And he's faced the tougher brand of competition at the UFC level in Marcos Rogerio de Lima, Muhammad Usman, and Parker Porter compared to Lukas Dricus for Valter Walker. I'd say Tafa has been more tested recently, while Walker probably has the better resume overall as a professional. At distance striking range, this fight is going to favor Tafa. He's a clean, technical, and powerful kickboxer who is ranked as high as number 5 in Glory's heavyweight division. Walker is a massive heavyweight. He's 3 inches taller, and he's going to have a 9-inch reach advantage over Tafa. So Tafa's going to have to close the distance here, get into the pocket against Valter so he can put those hands on him. Valter Walker is slower than molasses in January. He stays behind a jab, has some half-decent teep kicks, and he mostly just uses his striking to set up the entries on his takedowns. Tafa should be able to win most of the minutes and moments at range in this fight, as long as the size difference isn't too much of an issue for him. When it comes to the clinch and the grappling style of this fight, Junior Tafa never has and never will attempt a takedown in the UFC. He's a kickboxer, and he uses his wrestling in reverse to keep fights standing. Walker does his best work when he gets takedowns and gets that gigantic body of his on top of his opponents. He makes them wear his weight. He wears them down. Valter outcontrolled Dricus in his UFC debut 49% to 5%, winning 91% of the control time positions, while Tafa, over his 3 UFC fights, getting 0.3% control time for, allowing 69.7% control time to his opponents, losing over 99% of the control time positions in his fights. Tafa's got 81% takedown defense in the UFC, as he stopped 13 of the 16 attempts that he saw, but he's been controlled for 15.75 minutes on the 3 takedowns that he has given up. So if you take Junior down, he tends to stay there. Walker should be able to get takedowns and plenty of control time in this fight. The question is he going to be able to do anything of value with it? Junior Tafa's strengths, kickboxing. He's got more UFC experience. He's got the UFC strength to schedule advantage. He's fighting at home in Australia, but he's got a lack of a ground game, and he can't get back up when he gets taken down. That's going to be a problem against Walker. And he's got a lack of pro MMA experience, as he only has 7 pro fights and less than 40 minutes of pro MMA cage time. Valter Walker is the much bigger guy, 3 inches taller, 9-inch reach advantage. He's massive. The dude looks like a science experiment. He's 1 year younger than Junior Tafa. He's got the overall experience advantage over Tafa with 5 more pro fights and 90 more minutes of pro cage time. And he's got the wrestling and the grappling advantages in this fight. Now, the weaknesses for Walker, he's so slow and robotic. I mean, the dude moves like Frankenstein out there. He's got a lack of high-level opponents, and he has to make the long trip to Perth and fight in front of a hostile and drunken crowd that's going to be rooting for Junior Tafa here. So that's going to be a rough, that's going to be a tough road to hoe there for Valter. So this fight tends to be pretty binary. I see Tafa as being the better minute winner, minute and moment winner at range, even though Walker is the much bigger fighter due to how much faster and more technical of a kickboxer that he is. I also believe that Walker is the much more aggressive grappler and will be the guy who is much more likely to win minutes and moments in the grappling exchanges. Tafa's a tailor-made opponent for Walker, undersized with a big hole in his grappling defense. If you're on the Tafa side here, you're buoyed by the fact that Dricus was piecing up Walker at range, and I see Tafa as being way more dangerous at range than Lukas Dricus is. I think this line is accurate. Both guys have paths to victory, and each guy has their own special set of advantages. I think Walker was overvalued in his last fight, and after letting parlay bettors down in his UFC debut, we're getting a much more reasonable price on him this time around. You get size, you get height, you get a 9-inch reach advantage. The younger guy, the more experienced fighter overall, and the better grappler if you're on the Valter Walker side. If Walker has a bounce-back performance and can chalk up his lackluster UFC debut to nerves and an adrenaline dump, this price could look very cheap in retrospect. I'm not feeling strong about either side winning this fight, And I see either guy having success. I can see either guy having success, but I think Walker's best path is a lay and pray with control time decision, while I could see Tafa getting a knockout or winning a close decision in a fight that looks very similar to the Muhammad Usman Jr. Tafa fight. So I'm going to pick Valter Walker to win by decision here. He's so much bigger than Tafa, and I already came into this fight thinking that Tafa had a massive hole in his takedown defense and get-up game, which is exactly the kind of hole I want to see in one of Valter Walker's opponents if I'm picking Walker. I think Walker's size advantage will keep him safe enough at distance striking range, and that size advantage will come in handy in the clinch for Walker as well as on the mat when he gets on top of Tafa, allowing him to win minutes and bank rounds. I think Tafa has the bigger moments on the feet, but I don't think it'll be enough to make up for the amount of minutes I see Valter winning in the clinch and on the mat. Walker by close decision is going to be the pick for this fight. All right. Let's see here. 30 comments. Jesus Christ, you guys. I can't talk about this. So let's see here. Covert Bets in the room saying, what up, Weezy and Sons? Santos by sub, says Paul. Tafa by KO, says Covert. Litz saying Walker in fantastic shape on his IG and playing his points is solid. If Mo Usman is controlling you on the mat, Valter shouldn't have issues. I agree with you. Want to bet Junior Tafa? I just haven't yet. Worried if Walter does get a takedown, Junior probably stays there. Let's see. Walter's skinny now. Hello, won't take Tafa down. I think they both suck, says Jacob. It's heavyweight, Jacob. 90% of them suck. That's very true. Tafa round 1 KO, but maybe I think Walter is durable, and even if he eats punches, he might be, yeah. After the Delima fight, I can't play Tafa. I know people will say the same about Walker after the Bresky fight, but the man is 11-1. I'll try him here at dog money. Valter could score big on DraftKings. Yes, he could. Let's see here. Yeah, Walker for me and per AG looks like a light heavyweight. Yeah, 50-50 fight, but you're helping me lean one way. Let's see here. We got my guy Muhammad in there saying, "Oi, Big Weez, what's up?" Poor is saying Walker could have just had the standard UFC debut, but come out looking better. Yes, for sure. All right, you guys. Let's move on to this next fight. We're going to talk about Lee Jingaling at plus 295 going up against Carlos the Nightmare Prates at minus 370. Fight does not go to decision. Juiced up at about a 2/3 implied probability at minus 200 for this fight. Let's get the stats up here for you guys. This is an interesting one. Let's talk about the trends here because the trends are very important. We've got Lee Jingaling is on almost a 2-year layoff due to a serious spinal injury. Prior to that, he lost a close split decision to Daniel Rodriguez in a last-minute fight for both guys due to the shenanigans of the gourmet Chechen, Hamzat Chimaev, who blew up the card, and then all 6 fighters that were like the last 3 fights had to switch opponents. Being a 36-year-old welterweight on a 2-year layoff due to a spinal injury is not an ideal description of a fighter that I'm looking to back. And Prates, on the other hand, is on a 9-fight winning streak, with 8 of those 9 wins being first or second round finishes. Prates has not only been winning, but he's been doing so in impressive fashion. Fighting Nerds is one of the hottest camps right now, so obviously when a fighter is as hot and has as many highlight reel knockouts as Carlos does, you're going to pay a premium for his money line, and we are paying that at minus 370. Coming back from a 2-year layoff and a spinal injury is hard enough, but making your return against the nightmare Carlos Prates makes it even more difficult. So if we talk about strength of schedule here, obviously Lee, having had 15 more fights at the UFC level, is the more well-tested fighter who has fought the more experienced brand of competition with the better win-loss ratios. Prates made his UFC debut against a tough, experienced opponent in Trevin Giles. He got an impressive second-round knockout in that fight. Even though Lee has clearly fought the much tougher guys in his career, Prates hasn't exactly been a can crusher, and his striking skills could find success against high-level UFC strikers. The combined UFC records of the two guys Prates has fought, Radke and Giles, is 9 wins and 7 losses. While the combined records of the 17 guys Lee has fought is 102 wins and 78 losses. So this is clearly going to be a step up in competition for Carlos Prates. So the distance striking stylistic components of this fight. Now, Lee Jingaling, over a large sample size of UFC fights against above average UFC competition, has racked up some really nice distance striking metrics, which you can see right over here. Lee's got a positive 1.1 distance striking differential. He's got 41% accuracy, above average 62% defense, and he's landed 10 knockdowns and only absorbed 5 over 17 UFC fights. Lee has power, he stays busy, and he throws his punches with bad intentions. Prates' striking skills might be elite, though. He's tall and long for the division. He's a southpaw, and while he doesn't have a wide variety of weapons, his step-in knees, his straight left hand, and his rear leg kicks to the body and the head all have fight-ending potential. Prates' distance striking metrics look awful so far in the UFC, but this kid is a sniper, and he's patient. He waits for his opportunities to present themselves, and when they do, Carlos finds those openings and he takes advantage of them. Carlos is a finisher of the highest order, and while he's not a reliable minute winner, once he finds his range and he figures out what his opponents want to do, he turns up the pressure, and when he's aggressive, he tends to find the kill shot quickly. I think Carlos is much faster, more technical, has a wider variety of dangerous weapons, and he's more powerful while this fight is at distance striking range. The clinch and the grappling stylistic components here, neither one of these guys offensively grapples much. Lee does get 1.2 takedowns per 15 minutes, but he only averages 8% control time, as you can see right here. So even when he does get a takedown, he very rarely does anything of significance with it. Prates prefers to keep fights standing, and he's shown solid takedown defense so far in the UFC. So even though I give Lee the grappling edge in this fight, I doubt we see either guy offensively grapple at all here. Lee Jingaling, he's got the pro experience advantage with 2 more fights, almost 2 more hours of pro cage time. He's got the UFC experience advantage with 15 more fights, 165 more minutes of octagon time. He's the more durable guy. Lee's only been finished once in 27 professional fights and 8 pro losses. Prates has been finished in 5 of 6 pro losses. So I'd have to rate Lee as being the more durable guy, especially considering that he's fought the higher level of competition as a pro compared to Prates. The minute winning, in my opinion, is in favor of Lee Jingaling. Lee does more at range. He throws more. He lands more. Plus, he's the more likely guy to win minutes with his wrestling and grappling in this matchup if that happens. Prates is a minute loser, but a moment winner. So Lee, just by staying busy and avoiding the big shot, could do enough to get his hand raised here. And Lee has fought the more experienced brand of UFC competition with the better win-loss ratios. 17 UFC fights compared to only 2 for Prates tells us how much more tested Lee is at this point in his career. But the weakness for Lee is that he's on a 2-year layoff due to a spinal injury, and he's 36 years old. So that's something that's, we just don't know how that plays into this fight. It leaves us with a big missing chunk of information, and that missing chunk is how has Lee looked lately, and what can we expect from him going into this fight? Is he 100% healthy? Has he been training? How serious was the spinal injury? These are things that we don't really know. Now, Prates, here's what we do know. 5.5 years younger, 1 inch taller, 7-inch reach advantage. He's the better finisher. He's got a knack for finding big moments in fights. He's finished 14 of his 19 pro wins by way of knockout, and he's got a 90% finish rate as a professional. And this dude has crazy power. He's a sniper at distance striking range. Anything he lands can end your night. He's got 2 knockdowns in 2 UFC fights. He's landing a knockdown on 3.8% of the significant strikes that he's landed at this level, and both of his UFC wins come by way of knockout. But Carlos, the weakness, durability, been finished in 5 of 6 pro losses, And the long trip to Perth is not going to be easy, as Lee is going to be flying in from China. So he's, going to be way less time zones away from where he is normally than what Prates is going to be. So this is a tough fight to cap due to the almost 2-year layoff and spinal injury that Lee had. It's hard to know how ready he is to fight and whether there will be ring rust. Lee's going on 36 years old, and coming back from that kind of an injury could be very tricky. And coming back to this kind of an opponent makes things even more difficult because Prates does have that aura around him right now. The kid's striking is next level precise and dangerous, and he's out of a camp that's white hot in fighting nerds. Lee has the experience and strength of schedule advantages here, but this fight should take place mostly on the feet at distance striking range, and I don't think Lee is on Prates level at kickboxing range. The 7-inch reach advantage, the speed advantage, the power advantages that Prates has at distance are going to be too much for Lee. If Lee had any offensive grappling upside at all, I'd be a little more inclined to pick him to win or at least keep this fight close. But the 2-year layoff, the spine injury, the deficit in distance striking ability is too much for Lee to overcome here. So I got to go with Prates to get the win. I'll pick Carlos Prates to win by second round knockout. We go with the nightmare there by KO. The man smokes with cigarettes. I think that's super cool. And right now he does really look like a phenomenal striker. I know Lee has never been knocked out before, but facing a striker of this quality, size, and precision, coming off the 2-year layoff caused by a serious spinal injury, and I'm ready to believe that this version of Lee Jingaling won't be nearly as dangerous as the one we saw a few years back. I think Carlos keeps rolling. I think he gets a finish here and finishes it by knockout. What are you guys saying in the chat here? God damn, 34 comments. Love you guys. Over 100 of yous in here right now. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button. Please consider joining the Patreon. And if you don't want to do that, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of the work. Let me know what you think of the research, what you think of the new method of breaking down fights that I'm bringing to you guys today. I'd appreciate hearing anything from you guys. Let's see here. We've got Dogfather saying squarely betting Prates KO at -110. Don't arrest me. I don't hate it at all, Dogfather. These days in MMA betting, sometimes you just got to hold your nose and pay up for the stuff that you think is the most likely shit that's going to happen. And even though Lee Jingaling has never been knocked out, Carlos Prates could absolutely be the first guy to do it. Yeah, that is kind of gross, but I think it hits, man. It's probably getting Jingaling is probably getting KO'd for the first time. Agreed. I like it inside the distance at -220. Prates gets the win. Line's too wide. We got Gagnon saying balls deep in that ass and balls only. There's no other way. Let's go, man. Count saying, "Oh, Uncle Weezy, I'm wondering what are your personal opinion of the quality of these UFC number pay-per-views since UFC 300. Thought 301 was really good. 302 just okay. 303 just okay. 304 just okay. So, but you know what? That's what I think. This one I think is going to be pretty good, but it's an Australian card. If you're not Australian, you may not care about as many of these fighters as the rest of the world, or that Australia might. So I don't know, man. I think they're pretty good, but they're not fantastic. But we got a little bit spoiled with 299, 300, and 301. All right, let's see here. Fighting Nerd says Justin Statham. Prates is awesome. Yes. TKO prop -110. That's not crazy. Prates is dangerous anytime in the fight. Lee better be thinking grappling or else it's going to be trouble. Yeah, he's just not great at it, though, Prates by KO. Lee by decision on DK may not be terrible. Remember, Prates was losing to Giles. Yeah, he's not a great minute winner. Why do you not see Prates being finished? Oh, I could see Prates being finished. Yeah. But I think that, he would have to land a knockout. And I think Prates is too tall, too long, too hard to get into the pocket against. All right, let's see. We got Brian saying, yeah, I can't bet on an old man with a broken back. If Mr. Muay Thai hurts him, he'll finish it for sure, dude. Potential ass shaving nominee for sure. Yeah, you guys. All right, let's move on to the next fight. Oh, boy, this is going to be a fun one. As we've got Tuivasa going up against Jairzinho, Biggie Boy, Rozenstruik. Tuivasa plus 185, Rozenstruik minus 220. Fight doesn't go to decision, and minus 600 for this fight. So let's talk about some trends here. Tuivasa currently on a 4-fight losing streak. He's lost to 4 of the best fighters in the division, and he hasn't been priced as a favorite in any of those fights. Serial Gone is ranked number 2. Tai was priced as a plus 425 underdog there. Pavlovich currently ranked number 4 in the division, and Tai was priced at plus 180 versus him. Volkov currently ranked number 3 in the division. Tai was priced at plus 200 versus him. And Marcin Tybura currently ranked 9th, and Tai was a pick'em in that fight. So Tai didn't cover his price in any of those 4 fights. But Jairzinho is currently ranked 12th in the division, and stylistically, this fight should play out a lot closer. Rozenstruik has won 2 of his last 3 fights. He was priced as a plus 150 underdog versus Shamil Gaziev, and he dominated that fight after the first round, getting a 4th round win by retirement there. Prior to that, he got rinsed on the mat by Jailton Almeida, but he was a plus 375 underdog in that fight, so that's what the market was expecting. And he came through as a minus 175 favorite in the Chris Daukaus fight. He knocked him out in 23 seconds. He easily covered his price tag there. So I'd say that the market has slightly been overpricing Tuivasa lately, but not by much. While Rozenstruik could have been had at a discount a couple of different times in his recent fights. So I think maybe a little bit more value on the recent prices on the Rozenstruik side. The strength of schedule for both of these guys. Both of these guys are high-level heavyweights who have fought a very difficult level of competition. Jairzinho has fought the guys with the better win-loss ratios overall, but these guys' wins stack up pretty evenly when you look at them side by side. They have 5 shared opponents. Alexander Volkov, Serial Gone, Augusto Sakai, Junior Dos Santos, Andrei Arlovsky. Rozenstruik performed slightly better against the shared competition in comparison to Tai. Rozenstruik beat Junior Dos Santos when Tai lost to him, and Biggie Boy had slightly better results against the other guys that they both lost to, like Serial Gone. Serial Gone, Rozenstruik went to decision against him, while Gone knocked out Tuivasa in the 3rd round. And Volkov knocked, basically shut out both of them. So, I would say that Biggie Boy may be a slight strength of schedule advantage with the better ratio overall. These guys have very similar wins, but I think that the shared competition Jairzinho's looked a little bit better against. So I do like Jairzinho just a little bit there. Distance striking stylistic components of this fight. And this is the most important analysis here. This fight is going to take place at distance striking range. These guys have got 28 combined UFC fights between them, and neither one of these guys has ever completed a takedown in the UFC. So it's safe to say this fight will come down to who wins the distance striking exchanges. Both of these guys have a ton of knockout power. Jairzinho is 13-3 to the knockout as a pro, and Tuivasa is 13-2 to the knockout. Tuivasa has an 8-6 knockdown ratio in the UFC, while for Biggie Boy, it's 7-1. So Jairzinho appears to be the guy who can win minutes at range due to how technical he is and how he stays behind his jab. Jairzinho has a positive 0.9 distance striking differential, and for Tuivasa, it's negative 1.4. Jairzinho has also done a better job avoiding the big shot, as his distance defense is better, and he's only been dropped once in the UFC compared to 6 times for Tuivasa. Tai is going to throw a ton of low leg kicks, and against somebody like Biggie Boy, who uses his jab a lot, that could be a very good weapon here for Tai. So I really think that the leg kicks for Tuivasa are going to be the X factor in this fight, because Jairzinho stays behind that jab. I think that's going to be something interesting, but Tai being a southpaw and Jairzinho being an orthodox fighter, he may not have as much success as he would have had were they in the same stance here. So that'll be, the leg kicks for Tuivasa are going to be huge. Jairzinho is going to have to check those kicks or land heavy counters like Alexander Volkov did in order to discourage him from throwing them. I think Biggie Boy is faster, more technical, and just as powerful on the feet as Ty. So as long as his calf doesn't get shut down, I think it's Jairzinho who wins the minutes at range and is probably the first to find a big moment there as well. In the clinch and grappling, hard to talk about grappling because it's been both guys' weak spot and neither guy grapples offensively. So I don't see this fight going to the ground unless there's a knockdown. And even then, whoever lands the knockdown will probably just want their opponent to stand back up. So Tai Tuivasa, 5 years younger, very powerful fighter. He can't grapple for shit though. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, I mean, he's a great striker. He's got good minute winning in the striking. He's got serious power just like Ty does, and he's got a little bit of a strength to schedule advantage. But both these guys stink in the grappling exchanges, so I don't think either one of them is going to worry about being there this time around. So it's a hard fight to cap because both guys are power strikers with no grappling. And it basically comes down to who lands the first big shot. Heavyweight fights, ton of variance there. So it makes it hard to predict, because both of these guys have knockout power. When either of these guys have their opponent hurt, they swarm and look for the finish. Both guys have finished 13 of their 14 wins by way of knockout, and neither guy wrestles offensively. This fight takes place on the feet, and Tuivasa will be looking to smash Biggie Boy's lead leg, and he'll be looking to land power hooks thrown from the hip. Jairzinho is more technical, and his punches come straight down the pipe. He stays behind his jab, and he uses that jab to set up his power right hand. I think Rozenstruik is the better kickboxer here. His metrics over the long term are much better than Tuivasa's, and I see him winning the minutes of this fight while avoiding the knockout blow from Tuivasa. These guys are both very durable, so I'm actually going to go a little bit against the grain here. I'm going to pick Jairzinho Rozenstruik to win, but I'm actually going to pick him to win it by decision. I think he's going to just out-technical Ty here. I think because Ty's a southpaw and Rozenstruik's an orthodox fighter, that we're going to see Ty struggle to land those inside leg kicks as much. And if he doesn't, and Rozenstruik, his jab gets it's going to be harder for him to stay behind his jab and use it because they're in the opposite stance. So I don't think either one of these guys is going to be as comfortable throwing their power shots as they normally are here. So I see Rozenstruik by decision as being a cheeky look, and the fight goes to decision at plus 400 is something I might play for a quarter unit because stylistically, this being southpaw versus orthodox and both of these guys being fairly difficult to knock out, I could see this one going the distance potentially. What do you guys think in the chat? Right. Let's see here. Oh, Justin Statham gets cash, ring a ding ding with the $2 donation saying great value. Derek Lewis will lose. There we go. Derek Lewis ain't fighting, man. But yeah, dude, this is going to be an interesting one. These guys are both big hitters, dude. Let's see here. Cigarettes make your cardio better. That's why so many smoke with cigarettes these days. I mean, I think that the American public has been lied to about the benefits of cigarette smoking. That would be really cool if he's always got good walkout songs. Mitch saying Carlos ain't no chain smoker. He said he will have a cigarette or two after his fights. I know, man. I know. Let's see. Yeah, truly a fight where my heart says one thing, but I got to go with the big old brain box on this one. It's okay if they're menthols. Liking Whitaker finishing Alaskarov. That's later on. Let's see here. Glavik saying he can't bet on Ty anymore. I don't think he has a winning mindset, just there for the vibes. Ty going to bite down on the mouthpiece and throw haymakers at some point. Oh, that's what he always does. Yeah. Black Beast versus Biggie Boy. We've been waiting on this for 3 years. That would be a really fun one for sure. Let's see here. Yeah, I agree, man. I think it could. I think it absolutely could go to decision here, and I'm thinking about playing it for a quarter unit, very small. Decision is smart as fuck, to be honest, as Jacob Cole. I like it, dude. Plus 750 for Jairzinho by decision is something that might be worth a quarter unit shot as well, man. Let's see here. Yeah, dude. Definitely don't hate that over. Yeah, I mean, it could. The thing about the over is, if you're going to make that bet, you gotta be okay and know going into that bet that like shit that could go tits up in the first 30 seconds. Rozenstruik does not really shy away from a brawl, and Tuivasa has never shied away from a brawl. I think it could be a greasy fight, but this one also could be over in the first 30 seconds and nobody would be surprised. So if you make that over bet, make peace with it right away that it could easily go tits up and you could look like a complete moron. But at the big plus money number of plus 400, it'll only be a quarter unit loss. So that's not bad. Oh, dude, don't worry about it, man. He's saying we got a new manager and I got to be on my best behavior until we bring him into the dark side. Yeah, decision bet will be terrifying, yes, but that's why it's a small bet. And if it does go tits up early, it's Ty's fight. So take him by KO 1 to head. Either one of them, dude. Jairzinho Rozenstruik has so many first round KOs as well. I mean, both of these guys have got ridiculous power. So I think either one of them could wind up getting an early knockout. But let's keep moving here. We're on a pretty good pace. I thought this might take 3 hours, but we're going to get out of here in less than 2 hours and 20 minutes if I do my job here. Mateusz Gamrot versus Dan the Hangman Hooker. This is a hell of a fight. Great stylistic matchup. We got Mateusz minus 332, the Hangman plus 272. Fight doesn't go to decision here. Nice fat plus money number at plus 195. Let's talk about some trends here. So Mateusz Gamrot has won 7 of his last 8 fights, and he's currently on a 3-fight winning streak. His wins over Dos Anjos as a minus 480 favorite and Jalen Turner as a minus 225 favorite were bets that both cashed, but I wouldn't consider to be value. The market loves Gamrot, and there is a huge tax to pay when he fights, and that's the case this time around as well. Mateusz Gamrot was a minus 240 favorite against Beneil Dariush, and he lost that fight. Dan Hooker is on a 1-year layoff, and he's won 3 of his last 5 fights, and he's currently on a 2-fight winning streak. Hooker has been underpriced in his last 2 fights. He cashed versus Jalen Turner as a plus 240 underdog and destroying Claudio Puelles as a minus 155 favorite. Purely based on market bias and pricing, I'd say the value is definitely on the Hooker side, but the stylistic components of this fight are a big reason for Mateusz Gamrot being priced as a big favorite. When we talk about the UFC and overall strength of schedule for these guys, both of these guys have fought in an above average level of competition in the UFC. The combined records of Gamrot's 9 UFC opponents, 92 wins, 61 losses. Dan Hooker's 21 UFC opponents have a record of 200 wins and 123 losses. The wins on both sides stack up very well against each other. Both guys are well tested and have not had many easy fights at this level. When we look at this distance striking stylistic components here, Hooker should be the better minute and moment winner at distance striking range in this matchup. However, the X factor in any Mateusz Gamrot fight is the threat of the takedown. So Hooker will have to keep that in the back of his mind while this fight is standing. Gamrot's striking is underrated. He's accurate and defensively responsible and has held his own at distance striking range with some very dangerous opponents. Gamrot has a negative 0.3 distance striking differential, which isn't great, but he attempts 2.7 less distance strikes per minute than his opponents, so he's very efficient at range. Hooker is the better striker, though. He's a switch stance fighter, so he can fight in whatever stance his opponent is least comfortable with. He's got a 2-inch height and a 5-inch reach advantage, and he's the much busier fighter at range, attempting about 13 distance strikes per minute, while Gamrot only attempts about 7.5. And he's the much more powerful fighter, as Dan Hooker has got a 9-2 knockdown ratio in the UFC compared to Mateusz Gamrot's, which is 1 knockdown 4 and 5 allowed. So Hooker throws more, he lands more, and he's much more powerful than Gamrot, as well as being more durable at distance striking range. So Gamrot will be looking to get this fight to the ground, and Hooker will be looking to keep it standing. And when we look at the grappling components of this fight, Gamrot has done such an excellent job of mixing his wrestling, his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and his ground and pound together to use the combination of those 3 things to win a ton of minutes and stay safe at distance striking range and not absorb a lot of damage there to be able to get the nod by decision in a lot of his fights. Gamrot's getting 5.3 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he only allows 0.1. And this guy has fought Arman Sarukian. He's fought Beneil Dariush. He's fought Rafael Dos Anjos, and he's only allowing 0.1 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's out-controlling his opponents 26.5% to 2.8%. He wins over 90% of the control time positions in his fights. Dan Hooker's done a good job of keeping his fights standing, though. He's got 80% takedown defense on 77 attempts against, and he out-controls his opponents 19% to 9%, winning over 2/3 of the control time positions in his fights, and he has a positive grappling efficiency rating as well. But an interesting stat, Dan Hooker has had 5 UFC fights where his opponent attempted 7 or more takedowns against him. And in those 5 fights, Dan has a record of 1 win and 4 losses. We all know Gamrot is going to wrestle, especially against a taller, longer, and more powerful striker. So Dan not having a good record when he's getting grappled is a rough statistic. Mateusz Gamrot's strengths. He's 1 year younger than Dan. He's got the minute winning ability. He's 11-2 to the decision as a professional, while Dan Hooker is 5-6 to the decision. Gamrot uses his wrestling to win minutes and limit his opponent's offensive opportunities. And Gamrot's got the grappling advantage in this fight. He's the better minute and moment winner in the grappling exchanges. Now, Dan Hooker, he's 2 inches taller. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage. He's the switch stance fighter fighting a southpaw. That's a very big advantage on paper. And he's got the finishing ability advantage here. He's got more power on the feet, and he's got higher finishing rates in the UFC with a 69% finish rate compared to 57% for Gamrot. And overall, as a professional, 78% for Hooker, only 54% for Gamrot. So this fight's going to come down to who dictates where the fight takes place. Gamrot's a relentless wrestler who attempts 15 takedowns per 15 minutes. Dan Hooker is huge for the weight class, and he's most dangerous at distance striking range. And if he can keep this fight standing, there's little doubt who will win the distance striking minutes and moments. If Gamrot gets his grappling attack going, he will be able to wear on Hooker, make him defend and limit his opportunities to win minutes and moments at distance striking range. Hooker hasn't fought a lot of grapplers lately. He got finished by Makhachev in the first round when they fought, and he looked great against Claudio Puelles, but Gamrot lies somewhere in the middle. He's not as good as Islam, and he's way better than Claudio Puelles. The 1 year layoff is troublesome for Hooker, as is the fact that Gamrot has to make the long trip to Perth and fight in front of a hostile crowd. I think this line is way too wide. Hooker was not afraid to stand and bang with Jalen Turner, while Gamrot did everything possible to avoid striking exchanges with him. So I know Gamrot is going to be afraid to strike with Hooker. However, I rate Hooker's grappling defense and get-up game is much better than Jalen Turner's. And Gamrot barely beat Jalen Turner. He lost that fight on damage without question. But he was able to get enough takedowns and avoid the distance striking exchanges enough in order to get the nod on the judges' scorecards there. I think a massive percentage of Gamrot's win condition is decision. But if the fight is in Perth and Hooker is a local and the crowd will be on his side, and if the fight is scored on damage, that bodes really well for Dan Hooker, the more powerful and busy striker. I think this fight is going to be close. Gamrot's the better grappler. Hooker's the better striker. The market has overpriced Gamrot lately, and the market has underpriced Hooker lately. Not sure how I'm going to get involved on the Hooker side, but I'll be looking to play his money line or his plus 3.5 points handicap here. I'm gonna pick Mateusz Gamrot to win this fight by decision, but I actually think Hooker probably wins it by decision. I mean, it would be risky to pick Hooker by decision because Gamrot's 11-2 to the decision as a pro, and Hooker's 5-6. But the research that I've done on this fight, and you guys just heard all of it. I mean, I think I made a really good case for Dan Hooker here. And you know what? We're going with Dan Hooker by decision. That's what I'm going with here. Dan Hooker by decision, damage over control. Dan is taller, he's longer, he's more powerful and less chinny than Gamrot. His 80% takedown defense bodes well for him, and fighting Australia is also a big advantage. So we're going to go with Dan the Hangman Hooker to win this fight by decision. Let's see here. Hooker KO says Jacob Cole. Dirty Reg says you get plus 460 for Thai KO1, plus 165 for Rozenstruik KO1. I'd play Thai early. If it's the other way, we just miss out. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Uncle the Hangman Weezy, says Matt Nazarian. Good to see you hanging out. We got Glenbot saying Dan decision has my attention. Yeah, I mean, it might have mine too, Glenbot. I got Dan here. I think he'll get off more damage while Gamrot struggles to hold him down. I think it's absolutely possible. Gamrot's wrestling is so top tier that I'll add, but good luck to the Hooker backers. And it's right. Yeah, I mean, Dirty Reg's right here. Gamrot's, the way he blends his BJJ and his wrestling and the way he times his takedown entries and the way he uses his ground and pound to score points while he's on the mat, it's all very, very high level. Gamrot early knowing where the line was going, but I plan to arb dog or pass at these odds to me, says Muhammad. Poor's Wolf, I always love it when Hooker is undervalued. Love saving money on Hooker. Yeah, I hear you. Dirty Reg saying you have to give me plus 400 on Hooker to be interested. Plus 265 at my book isn't enough. Moneyline Mill saying, sup, Weezy, let's cash. We got Justin saying Gamrot is a bigger version of Merab in terms of wrestling. He is, yes. Cody's calls in the room saying, yo, oi, what's up, Cody? We got Dirty Reg. I said, I really think this is a levels fight, and I don't see Hooker nowhere near Gamrot's level. Gamrot's a very high-level wrestling. Islam, Arman, and Gamrot, my top 3 lightweight fighters. Split decision, possibly, says JP Taylor. Christian Poli saying Gamrot doesn't do enough damage to cover this price in my eyes. He could control Hooker for 70% of the time and still lose the fight. That's entirely possible. We know them judges won't score it like that. They'll just see Gamrot on top most of the fight, and that's it. Trust your balls then, Weezy. I learned that from Mills. That brother will back his pick. Yes, sir, he will. Might be a good time to throw a quarter unit on split decision. Yes, I hear you. We got Call Me Husker saying Mateusz Gamrot by psychic powers causing an injury. Dude, he fucking both Fajera and the other fight the Fiziev fight ended in injuries. Yeah, so he gets those fucking weird finishes sometimes. Tajik Bey likes the pick. I hope it cashes. Let's see if it does. Robert saying, personal question for you. Are you an MMA gambler first or a fight fan first? I was a fight fan first. I didn't really even start gambling until I started gambling a little bit before I started doing content, but I was mostly a DFS player, which is why I started keeping the statistics. And so I'd say I'm a fight fan first, but right now I'm definitely more of a degenerate gambler than I am. I'm a fan of both, obviously. Dan is a dog. So is Gamrot, though. I like the pick too, Weezy. Gamrot fought Turner on very short notice. He will decision or sub Hooker. He says in new interviews that he's looking for a finish now. Whenever I hear a fighter who hasn't been finishing fights say in interviews that they're going to start getting finishes, that means they're never going to finish. These guys, he's not finishing Hooker, dude. I don't think. It would need to be a weird one, but yeah, I never listen to fighters when they say they're going to get finishes. They never do. Especially when they haven't been getting them. You're either a finisher or you're not. So and that's not what Gamrot is. Gamrot is somebody, he's going to be looking to avoid the striking exchanges here. He's going to be holding on to Dan Hooker for dear life. I'm with you. Line is wide. Damage-based scoring for sure. Yo, what's up, Gamrot? Easy win, y'all. Overthinking this free parlay piece. Hooker is a pooch, plain and simple. He's a dog, man. Gamrot by mind bending. Weezy, if you hear John Mark McCarthy scores the bout, just know we cashing that hooker ticket. We got Robin MNDI saying everyone here is a DGen gambler. Don't worry, I know, man. Dan is not that good, but Gamrot saying getting a finish is not a good sign. Yeah, dude, I hear you. All right, let's move on to the next fight, the co-main event. Kai Kara France versus Steve Erceg. We got Kara France plus 139, Erceg the minus 160 favorite. Fight doesn't go to decision here at plus 185. So, where are the stats? There they are. Let's talk about the trends in this fight. Kai is currently on a 14-month layoff. He's coming off a solid performance against Amir Albazi where he was priced as a pick'em, and that fight could have went either way. A lot of people thought Kai got robbed there. He was a plus 170 underdog in the Moreno fight, and he got caught by a body kick in the third round in a fight that was pretty even until that point. And before that, he cashes a massive plus 340 underdog as against a solid wrestler in Askar Askarov. The market's been accurate on Kai lately. Steve Erceg was on an 11-fight winning streak before he fought Alexander Pantoja in Brazil, and he lost a close decision as a plus 150 underdog in that fight. Prior to that, the market understood full well what a high-level prospect Steve Erceg was, pricing him as a minus 440 favorite versus Matt Danger Schnell and minus 200 favorite versus Alessandro Costa. The layoff is an interesting nugget for this fight. Kai Kara France had to pull out of the Manel Kopp fight in September of last year with a concussion, and we haven't seen him fight since. Definitely something to keep your eye on, as Erceg has fought 4 times since Kai fought last. And then the strength of schedule, both of these guys had fought an above average level of competition at the UFC level. Kai Kara France has 7 more fights at the UFC level, so he's obviously been tested at a higher level for a longer time. However, when we look at the ratings on the aggregate, Erceg has the superior metrics. His UFC competition has a combined record of 23-14 with 9.3 total fights and a 1.6 ratio. And for France, it's 49-35 with 7.6 total fights and a 1.4 ratio. So very close. So in addition, Erceg's wins over David Dvorak, Alessandro Costa, and Matt Schnell, they actually rate better than Kai Kara France's wins over Elias Garcia, Julian Paiva, Mark the Bumblebee De La Rosa, Tyson Nam, Rogerio Bontorin, Cody Garbrandt at 125 pounds, and Askar Askarov. Steve fought for a UFC title in his 4th fight in the promotion and looked really good in a loss. So obviously this kid is ready to fight the best fighters in the division. If we look at the distance striking stylistic components here, you've got 2 guys who are plus strikers. You're going to have Steve Erceg being 5 inches taller and having just a fingernail's worth of a reach advantage here. But both of these guys have got good numbers, positive 0.7 distance striking for differential for Erceg, positive 1.2 for Kai Kara France, 6 knockdowns for Kai Kara, but he's been knocked down 4 times. While Erceg, I think, is going to be the more durable guy. He can take flush punches, clean punches, and keep walking forward. So I like Erceg's durability a little bit more on the feet. I think he's going to be the guy more likely to actually land the bigger shots here. He's a little bit more accurate, and he's the bigger dude. When it comes to the grappling, both of these guys are good grapplers, but I would rate Erceg as the guy more likely to go to the wrestling. Erceg in his fights is attempting 4.7 takedowns per 15 minutes, while Kai Kara France attempts just under 2. But Kai Kara France is very difficult to take down. 88% takedown defense. He's only being taken down 0.6 times per 15 minutes. But what's interesting is he gets as many takedowns as he allows, but he's only winning 38% of the control time positions in his fights. So when guys do get him down, they can win minutes against Kai Kara France down there. It's hard to get him down, but once you get him down, you can keep him there and you can win some minutes. So I think Steve Erceg is a little bit better or a little bit more likely to win moments at range. And I think he's a little bit more likely to win minutes in the grappling exchanges here, We've seen Kai be finished in 2 of his 4 losses and in 6 of his 11 pro losses, while Steve Erceg has never been finished as a professional. And the guy went 5 rounds in Brazil with Alexander Pantoja. So we know that this dude is the real deal, that he's already been tested at the highest level that he could possibly be tested in the division. And a lot of people thought he won that fight. So I'd say he passed that test. Steve Erceg has been the busier fighter lately. He's the taller fighter. He's the younger fighter. He's the more durable fighter. And I think he's the guy more likely to win minutes in the grappling exchanges here. So I'm going to pick Steve Erceg to win this fight, and I'm going to pick him to win it by decision. So I'm going with Astro Boy Erceg to win this fight by decision. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Now that I think about it, I got to give Bilal props for not saying he was going to go out and get a finish when he knew he wasn't, like most fighters do. Yes, sir. JP saying, I'm worried about post-championship fight hangover, but I have to pick Erceg. That's always something, you know. Bought low on Erceg minus 163 on my book. There you go. Muhammad saying there's money coming in on Kai, and I love that. Steve minus 160, good enough for me. I agree with that. First time going against Kai Kara France, but wouldn't surprise me if he brings out that dog. Steve is minus 155 now. Erceg smash spot, in my opinion. We got Volkan Ardic in the room saying, "Oh, what's up, Volkan? What do you think about Prates, Nicoll, and Tafa?" I'm picking Prates, I'm picking Nicoll, and I'm picking Valter Walker. Remdog, if Steve had to run the gauntlet to get the title fight, I would feel more of a letdown from him, but he's still got a legit chance to get back to the belt, so no letdown. And he's still very young and new to the promotion as well, so I think that'll bode well for him too. I've been envisioning Erceg finding the KO here. And, well, I mean, Kai Kara France has been finished in more than half of his pro losses, so it's definitely a possibility. Count Christian saying, Erceg versus Kai Kara France is my prediction for fight of the night. It should be a great one, dude. All right. Thanks, bro, says Volkan. And Dirty Reg saying Kai getting a less number for KO. Yes, he is. All right, you guys. Let's move on to the main event of the evening. The fight that will decide who is the reigning king of Africa. We've got Dricus DuPlessis, who breathes the African air every single day. The fighting pride of South Africa. Team CIT stand up, minus 110 pick'em against Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, who we've seen on a little bit of a layoff here, coming back. He is a pick'em against the champion. Fight doesn't go to decision here at minus 135 for this fight. This is a great one. Obviously, it's a great main event. But Israel Adesanya has taken almost a year off here in between the loss to Sean Strickland and now. And he did say after that Strickland loss that he was going to take time off. He actually said he would take more time off than 1 year. He said he was going to probably take a couple of years off. A lot of injuries, evidently, to rehab. You know, and Israel's been at the top of the heap for a long time. So when you lose that championship, you know, it's hard to get back to it. And he did get back. He's already done it once. He lost it to Alex Pereira, and then he got it back. And then he lost it again to Sean Strickland, and now he's looking to get it back again. And he's going to be looking to get it back against Dricus DuPlessis, who's a very interesting fight for him. Now, Dricus has just been rolling. He's 7-0 in the UFC. And before that, he was on a nice winning streak as well. I believe the last loss for Dricus DuPlessis came to Roberto Soldic back in his KSW days at 170 pounds. So Dricus is 4.5 years younger, but it's going to be Israel, who's taller by 3 inches, who has a 4-inch reach advantage here. Israel's the more experienced fighter overall, 4 more fights, about 150 more minutes of cage time, and he's got 9 more fights at the UFC level and over 200 more minutes of UFC cage time. Both of these guys have fought a very high level of competition at the UFC level. Dricus DuPlessis fighting just as experienced of opponents as Israel is. He's got a 77-42 career record of the guys that he's fought overall at the UFC level. As Israel Adesanya's got a 180-84. So it's The ratio a little bit better at 2.1 compared to 1.8 for DuPlessis, and the win's just a little bit better for Israel Adesanya. And obviously, he's got 9 more fights at the UFC level. So yeah, I'd give Israel Adesanya the strength to schedule advantage, the experience advantage overall, the experience advantage in the UFC. He's 3 inches taller. He's got a 4-inch reach advantage, and he's the better striker. Let's face it. I mean, Dricus is not a very technical striker. Israel Adesanya is a guy that can absolutely pick you apart at range. He can win minutes there. He can win moments there. Israel Adesanya has 13 UFC knockdowns, and he's only absorbed 1. He lands a knockdown on over 1% of the significant strikes that he lands. He's got a positive 1 distance striking differential, above average accuracy, right on average defense, and he doesn't spend a lot of time on the mat, as he's spending almost 85% of his UFC cage time, which is almost 300 minutes in the octagon at distance striking range. So Israel gets the fight that he wants, and he flourishes in that fight. So there's a lot of reasons to like Israel here. Like we just mentioned, size, length, height, experience overall, and at the UFC level. Dude is 16-1 to the knockout as a professional. And he's the better striker, minute winner and moment winner in the striking exchanges, and he's able to keep fights standing. But the thing about Israel Adesanya is that he doesn't really see any wrestling in his fights. For some reason, guys that are better grapplers than Israel Adesanya choose not to grapple against him. That's not going to be the case here. Dricus DuPlessis is averaging 5.8 takedowns per 15 minutes. He pressures a lot. He's going to be coming forward, throwing in combination. While Israel Adesanya is this beautifully technical, smooth, accurate, sniper-like striker at range, he needs that range, you guys. He needs his kicks to keep that range. He needs the kicks to maintain distance so he doesn't get hit a lot. This is a guy who's only absorbing 3.1 significant strikes per minute, 3.3 per minute spent at distance. That's much less. That's 1 less than the divisional average. So Israel Adesanya is not a guy that's getting hit a lot. He's very difficult to find at distance striking range. He maintains distance very well. He uses his length very well. But Dricus is exactly the kind of opponent who fights with exactly the kind of style that could make this fight anything but technical. He could make it grimy. And that is not how Israel Adesanya ever wins fights. He doesn't win in wars. He wins precise distance striking battles. This guy never gets takedowns. He only spends 15% of his UFC octagon time in control time positions, and he's only winning 22% of those positions. So if somebody can pressure constantly, close that distance, not allow Israel to feel safe at distance striking range, and if somebody can mix in those takedowns and make this guy use his energy defending takedowns and trying to get back up when he is taken down, rather than just letting him fight his fight, letting him dance around that big cage and outpoint you at range, I think that's another way that Dricus could make this his fight and not Israel's. So while Israel does have all these advantages on paper, it's Dricus's forward pressure, it's his youth, it's the power that he has, and the fact that Dricus DuPlessis is 10-1 to the submission as a professional, while Israel Adesanya is 0-0 to the submission as a professional. So I think the way that Dricus fights really is going to bode well for him. And we're going to see something that we haven't seen in a very long time. And that is somebody that is an opponent for Israel Adesanya who doesn't fight Israel Adesanya's fight. I think Israel's been very fucking lucky that he's never faced anybody that could grapple their way out of a paper bag. Even the guys that did grapple against him, like Jan Blachowicz, it was a 5-round fight. He only wrestled for 2 out of the 5 rounds. He could have easily just dominated that fight. but Jan can't wrestle for 5 rounds. He's just not that guy. Dricus just never stops going forward. Dricus is never going to fuck off. Dricus isn't going to play a distance striking game with Israel Adesanya here. So I think the way that Dricus fights early here is going to render Israel Adesanya very ineffective late in this fight. And I think that Dricus is going to eventually find a submission here and get Israel Adesanya out of there. I'm picking Dricus DuPlessis to be and still, and I'm picking him to win this fight by 3rd round submission. See what you guys are saying in the chat here. Right. Yeah, dude. Something been telling me to leave fights for the championship belts alone. I think the judges tend to really screw those up. They really do. Then he said he was joking about taking years off. Oh, is that what he said? He was joking? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. If you got DDP at plus 130 or better, cheers. That was the way to go. DDP can duplicate Strickland's pressure. UFC really wants that Africa card, though. Izzy has to win for that to happen. Izzy and New says Olajuwon bought low on Izzy on 365 minus 125 as well. Keep this in mind, guys. If we see no subs on this whole card, remember I called that first. I'm only seeing KOs and decisions. Same reg says Baby Sharp. Cool Sharp, we'll see. Polnick, Tim is in the room saying, preach it, Weezy. Izzy is losing this fight. We'll see, man, but I'm picking Dricus. Bet over 2.5 rounds and also grabbed Dricus DuPlessis by decision at plus 500. Olajuwon saying, I think Izzy will catch Dricus DuPlessis. Remdog saying, I recommend folks being selective with which line they play on this one because money is going to be coming in back and forth. And if the line is moved, you could probably get a better price if patient. I keep trying to tell people that picking the dog by decision will burn you. If you like a dog, then think they will finish the fight. It's something to think about. The judges, they tend to give close fights to favorites. With it being a championship fight, all that can go out the window. But with a non-championship fight, I track it. Yo, Weezy, tomorrow night at 9:10 p.m., work for Ask Weezy. 9:10 my time. I might be able to do that, Go. I will send you a link to the Ask Weezy. I'll go live. I was thinking about doing it tonight. If tonight works at like 11 o'clock Central Time in the United States, let me know. I could do that. But if not, we'll try to do it tomorrow night. I love the chat, everyone. Sharp minds all over the place. Agreed, Dirty Reg. Groove saying DDP absorbs more strikes by round every round that goes up. Yes, he does. I wonder if Dricus will just walk out with the Lion King theme song. I just can't wait to be king. That would be great. We got that compounding won't look good. Facts spot on breakdown. Yes. Sorry, I'm on Aussie time and rarely on Twitter. Oh, yeah, it's no problem, man. I hear you, dude. Izzy 2-3 body kick KO. Okay. Great show. Thanks, everyone. I got to book it. Thanks. Good luck on all your plays. We got Baby Sharp on with you, brother, the general in here. What is your underdog pick for the UFC 305 minus Casey O'Neill? We're going to talk about that right now. Saying press the like button. My guy Kiwi in here saying sure, go. All right, guys. The Memorial Dogs or Barking pick of the week. Who do you guys think it should be? I'm picking several underdogs here. Hooker is an underdog. Walker is an underdog. Ramos is an underdog. O'Neill is an underdog. And that's it. So we got dog of the week is either going to be Casey O'Neill at about plus 125, plus 130. Ricardo Ramos by decision will be a nice one at like plus 330 or so. Valter Walker is a decent one. And then we've got also Dan the Hangman Hooker, who's a big plus money number here. You know what? I think it was, yeah. The Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking pick of the week, you guys. The Dan Hooker money line. You know, why give you a plus 110 or a 120 or a plus 130 when I can give you fucking plus 270? Look, we read all the notes. We did all the research. this is live. This is going to be a close fight. I think Dan Hooker plus 3.5 points handicap at right around even money is a great look this week as well. But let's just give you the Dan Hooker money line at plus 272. Damage over control is going to be the theme for that fight. And that's why we're looking at Dan Hooker to make another Bootsy Collins Memorial Dogs Are Barking pick of the week, which we hit last week with Jonata Gini's money line at plus 180, which leaves us with one more order of business to go with, you guys. What are we going to do? Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. Who do we pick this week? Who do you guys think it's going to be? Who are we picking to go out there and win violently and cash a fairly priced ticket for us? I'd like to hear from you guys. We got Taylor saying, love the work, Weezy, live from the UK. Appreciate you in here. We got Dixon likes Hooker. Remdog likes Walker. Bonjour from France, says John Jones, the GOAT. Bonjour to you too. I've been to your beautiful country several times. Love France. France, stand up. We got Muhammad liked Hooker. Hooker is nice at near 3-1. So you guys agree. Walker and Casey, good dogs. I'm picking them both. Great stuff as always, Weezy. YBP MMA saying Jesus Aguilar by decision. We got Dricus by subs, says John Jones. Let's go. Let's see. Walker for me, says Glenbot. We got Gogo Flamingo, says, yeah, that works. Send me your email on Twitter. What's the time in your city at the moment? Right now, we are at 5:30 p.m. So if you want to do it tonight, which will be 6 hours from now, 11:30 my time, we could do it tonight, Gogo Flamingo. I have no problem doing it tonight, but let me know. Do you want it to be 6 hours from now or 30 hours from now? That's what we'll do. Let me know on Twitter, and I will I'll leave you my email address there. And if you want the PayPal's in the description of the video too. You can check that out right there. Or wait, no, it's not. So I will send that to you. I got to put PayPal in the description of my video in case anyone ever wants to tip me. We got Hooker KO, says Elijah Dream. Casey O'Neill looks tasty as a dog here. I bet her money line. O'Neill is going to burn you. I'm telling you, she's a fraud, says Remdog. Christian Poli says value is definitely there on the Hooker side. Ultra Bayern saying the GOAT. What's up, dude? Yes, I'm balls deep in Hooker, says Gogo Flamingo. Adesanya grappling is 0. It's not very good, man. Walker has no cardio. Bad bet there. Okay. We got Ultra Bayern saying Uncle Weezy for president 2024. TG says Reyes. That is not going to happen for ass shaving of the week. Prates says Dick's Insider. Erceg says Remdog. Gamrot sucks. Dana going to treat him like Makachev or Mokayev after 305. The Dart Slinger says Jack Dick's Insider. Tom Nolan says Justin Statham. Protest by Highlight KO. Rozenstruik says Polmik. Tom Nolan says Olajuwon. Gogo saying what's up to Kiwi. Dricus DuPlessis actually smother Izzy and stop him in the 4th. Uncle Weezy for president. Erceg ass shaving. Erceg probably, says Muhammad. We got JP Taylor, ring a ding ding with the $5 donation saying, thanks, Weezy. Hit the like, everybody. I agree with that, but let's go with it. Here's what you guys were all wrong, by the way. Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week this week is going to be the local fighter from Perth, Australia, Stewart Nicoll, to shave the ass of Jesus Aguilar. I like Jesus Aguilar. I think he's a very good fighter. He's got a heavy right hand. He's got a good takedown game, a good grappling game, a very solid guillotine choke, but he doesn't have great takedown defense, and he's sloppy on the mat. Stewart Nicoll is a very high-level Brazilian jiu-jitsu player. I love the conditioning. I love the cage wrestling. I love the open mat entries, and I love the body lock takedowns. He's bigger than Jesus. He's stronger than Jesus. He's the better submission grappler, and he's the better minute winner. And on the feet, he's going to be taller, longer, landing some good calf kicks. I think that he's better everywhere than Jesus. In addition, Jesus making the long trip to Perth, fighting the local prospect. I've got to bet 1 unit on Stewart Nicoll plus or minus 3.5 points handicap at plus 160. I also like Stewart Nicoll to finish this fight inside the distance. And as such, he's one of the cheaper priced guys on the money line this week that I think gets a finish. So your Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week this week is Stewart Nicoll to shave the ass of Jesus Aguilar. Thank you guys for coming by. Ring Jingaling, says Dixon Sider. You dug deep into the crate for that ass shaving. Nice call. Nicoll going to do our Lord and Savior Jesus Aguilar dirty like Judas. Let's go. Christ is King, says Baby Sharp. I'm on confident as well. Beware, Jesus is the way, says Kiwi Brew. Let's go, JP. All right, you guys. Saying thanks, Weezy, in chat. Great show. Appreciate all you guys for hanging out. We had over 100 of you in here at one point. Hit that thumbs up on your way out. Hit that subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to have access to this new way that I am breaking down these fights and these amazing write-ups where we talk about the last 3 fights for each fighter and give you a blow-by-blow description of those fights, the current market trends, the recency bias, the market accuracy of the recent betting lines, the overall and UFC strength, the schedule comparisons for both fighters, distance striking, clinch striking, strengths, weaknesses, conclusions, and best bets. Join the Patreon for $25 a month. It's a great way to support my work. Keep an eye out later on tonight, 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time, DFS by the Numbers YouTube channel. We're going to be doing the DFS show, myself, Brady, Gordo, and Monk. After that, 9:15 Central Time will be this week's episode of Probability, where Brady and I are going to look through the betting models that I make available on my Patreon, and we're going to be finding all the plus EV bets that match up with our stylistic reads so that we can find ways to stack cashed tickets like flapjacks. So 9:15 on DFS by the Numbers YouTube channel. Check out Probability this week. That will be going out for free to the masses. And then look for me either later on tonight after that or tomorrow night, depending on what Gogo Flamingo wants, for an episode of Ask Weezy. I'll show up. I'll bring all the statistics. All you got to do is show up and ask me relevant questions, and I will answer them for you guys. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your attention. Let's stack cashed tickets like flapjacks for UFC 305. God bless each and every one of you. And if this wasn't enough content for you today, look for me for about another 5 hours tonight. So we're going to keep it going. UFC 305, it's a great card. Let's continue breaking it down, and let's make some money betting on these fights this week. Take it easy, everybody. I'll see you a little bit later on tonight.